right, we are live, everyone. Welcome back to Reasoned Answers.
It's as good as waging war against Allah and His Messenger.
As you can see, we got quite a bit of action going on the cat cam. Got two cats in my lap simultaneously. See how long that lasts. Probably not too long. They tend not to stay together for extended periods, but for now, got two cat cams. Oh, no sound.
Andrew Martin can hear it, so.
Might just be, sound is there. Okay, must be John Wilson forgot to turn his volume on. So
Jack Ray's already making it
Wilson,
rain.
You can hear me, right? You can't hear me, but it is on your end, not on my end this time. Another time, perhaps it would have been on my end, but not this time. We got Jack Ray gifting 5 memberships already.
Who ate the apple? You ate the apple. The whole apple. Yes, the whole apple. You ate it. But a small seed, you left it. You put it back into the earth. What happened? Allah, through His power, caused that to grow and to give you how many apples? Thousands.
So thousands of apples and 5 gifted memberships. See the pinned note there. YouTube, for the first month of the channel memberships being turned on, is adding $10 extra for anyone who joins as a member. I'm not 100% sure whether gifted memberships count or not, but regardless, thank you very much for that, Jack. Thanks in large part to Jack's support, but also from the half dozen of you or so who paid for your own memberships, as well as a handful that were gifted by Nissan Attic. We had the first members only live stream this past weekend. We used that time to make a whole bunch of new emojis. I still have some homework to do and create a few more on my own from suggestions and things that were a little too complicated to do live. But we have a bunch of custom emojis for you to try out. If you're unsure what some of them mean, well, you can ask someone who is in the know because they were at the special members only live stream. Well, once you know what they are, I'm sure you'll get them, but due to the nature of an emoji being very small, you may not immediately recognize every single one of them. I think you'll enjoy all of them. Some of them I had to give somewhat ambiguous names, so YouTube won't flag them and be like, this is highly inappropriate. I see someone just spammed all the custom emojis there, so they're flying across your screen now. Who gifted the membership? Jack Ray gifted the membership, the whole membership. And Jack Ray, through his generosity, caused the channel to grow, giving us many members. How many members? Thousands.
That's good. That's good.
Very good. And Morkay also gifted 1 membership.
Here's the sad news. We are running out of funds. All our work is going to stop unless people like you watching this video will help us. Your donations can get you a share in a reward and reap those rewards for years to come, inshallah. This is not a donation or a charity, but an investment for the hereafter.
Very solid investment there, Morkay. Thank you for that donation. And we will be having more members-only events in the coming weeks, since since there's a bunch of people. We had over 200 views on that members-only live stream. I figure probably about 2 views on average per person, so like 100 or so people tuned into that. Was very pleased with those results. I'll definitely be doing more of that. Now, you won't miss any teaching content by not being a channel member, but you might miss some silly hangout content.
I was asleep, but apparently I probably would have been able to access it because I am apparently completely immune from any gifted channel memberships, like because of having the level of mod status that I do, I guess. They decide that those moderators do not get gifted memberships, and I can't use the other gifted things. So I'm like, don't have the authority. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and it did warn me when I was setting up the stream that moderators would not be able to view it unless they were channel members. I guess it gives you that warning in case you were counting on people being able to moderate it, and then you don't have any moderators there because none of them are channel members. But it did give me that warning, so yeah, you would actually have to be.
But other
channel member.
moderators actually got gifted memberships previously from, but apparently I'm immune, so that's pretty funny.
Definitely. And Chris Page with a very good point. Muslims should invest for the hereafter as they have 72 Oris to support, so they'll need all the money they can
See,
get.
watch, I'm not going to get a membership. He just gave 50. There are only 32 people watching, and yet I will not get a membership. Guaranteed. I'm like immune. It's hilarious.
There's a rumor that if you click on the little thing saying that memberships were gifted, it'll give you one. I'm not sure one way or another if that's true. This one, Mark said that this emoji looks like Muhammad in a Santa suit. I asked Mary what she thought of this emoji, and that was her impression as well. She's like, Islamic Santa? And no, this is Shake Ketchup. This is Shake Ketchup. It's more clearly a ketchup bottle shape at full size, but even at emoji size, once you know what it is, like, oh yeah, Shake Ketchup, know all about him. Here he is a top Islamic apologist. So, Mary, this week, now that I've spent all this time blabbing on and about channel memberships, and Brogro says, go green. The chat is turning more green than Arabia as per a previous live stream. Always like seeing that green there. But now I've spent all this time talking about channel memberships. Let's talk about the actual subject today, which is Muhammad didn't believe in Allah. I saw a number of comments before we started, people interpreting this as us saying that Muhammad was a charlatan. Now, I personally think that question is very hard to answer, whether someone believes in what they say or doesn't. Now, there's certainly times where Muhammad uses his status to give himself special privileges. That doesn't necessarily mean he didn't believe in any sense of the word. That's not actually the discussion that we're going to be having today. Very good discussion, worthwhile having for sure, but not exactly the discussion of today. Today we're going to be making a related but different claim that when Muhammad first started to say he was a prophet, he was not saying he was a prophet of Allah. Rather, he had a different idea in mind. He thought he was a prophet of someone or something else. Is that correct, Mary?
Yeah, he believed that he was that his god Al-Harb was not Allah. He believed that, well, he didn't even believe he was a prophet at this point, but his own god that he was telling everyone that they need to worship. His title is Al-Harb, the Lord, and his title is not Allah. Allah is a different God.
So there you go. Muhammad did not believe in Allah. He believed in a different God. Mary is going to prove that through her usual high-level, careful research. I wonder how the Muslims are going to react. Go ahead and put in chat if you think you know how they'll react, because I think I know how they might react, and that might be to say, but the Trinity doesn't make any sense, or something along those lines. I see Allah is being spammed. Thank you for all those spam Allahs across the top of your screen there. All right, so let's get Mary's presentation up here. As predicted, see, I'm more of a prophet than Muhammad. Both cats have, in fact, already left. I'll turn the cat cam back on if we get a cat later.
All right. So, whoops. Here, I don't know why it's jumping. All right. Now we're on the correct one. There are several big picture items that I want to talk about today. I am going to talk, I am saving my voice because too much choir practice and singing practice has strained it somewhat. So I'm going to talk for a maximum of 3 hours, and wherever I get, I'm going to stop. But these are the topics that I anticipate hitting, if not this stream, the next stream. What I am doing is I am delving into the sources that we have on Islam. And for early Islam, the only source that we have is the Quran, and the related ahadith, the sirah material, is very, very slim for this period and not very helpful. So that's really what I'm going through right now. And it's not just to go, hey, look at this and read through it and talk about it, so much as to get the big pictures and the big ideas of what Muhammad actually taught at this point in his career, because it is very different from what regular people think that he taught. So early on, Muhammad's God was not Allah but Al-Rab, the Lord, who could not be Allah and was contrasted with Allah. My sound is slow, they say. I am talking a little bit softer today because, again, saving the voice.
Yep, turns you up.
All right, so let me know if that's better, everybody. So we will also discover why and when Muhammad's God changed from an I to a we. Muhammad's God early on never used plurals. Then suddenly he usually used plurals. What happened? When did it happen? And why did it happen? I believe that we can make very educated guesses about this. We also have more proof in the Quran that Muhammad was originally an idolater. He was not a monotheist from birth. We're also going to talk about some really massive variants in the Quran, including entire lost phrases or sentences. We're also going to cover more evidence that the early practice of Muhammad, his one main religious exercise, was night prayer. The very prayers that later become optional only, the witr prayers is what they become. These supererogatory prayers is what they become eventually. But at the beginning, the only form of Mohammedan worship, because this is not really Islam yet, the only form of Mohammedan worship was these night prayers. And we will have more evidence of this practice. It's the only practice that we have any evidence for. Furthermore, we have more evidence that the surat function the same as pagan charms and are thus embedded in a pagan context. So although he's trying to create this monotheistic text, because Muhammad is fundamentally from a pagan background and does not actually hear from God, even as he's trying to do this, he treats these things in a very pagan way. And so Islam has many, many pagan aspects that are embedded into the practice of Islam, descending from Muhammad's teachings even at the earliest time and continuing through. We'll also talk about Adam and Eve eating Satan's kid and how this relates to the Islamic teachings of sin nature. We'll talk about a surah that was removed that is not one of the two that are typically brought up whenever we talk about surahs that didn't make it to the Quran, that we actually know the text of. That's an important part. We know the text of this. And then we will also deal with issues of the Quran's claim of it being the clear signs versus the obscure circumstances that actually surround it that you have to know to actually understand what the Quran is referring to oftentimes, and the special knowledge that the exegetes say that they have that alone allows you to understand the Quran. Quran says it's clear. The exegetes give context and meanings that no one could possibly get from the text itself. Therefore, the text is not clear. Now, these are all from a number of surat that were given in the early stages of Islam before about 616. Okay.
All right, so let's get a quick reaction.
This is really funny and sad at the same time.
Let's get a couple from the audience as well, or at least a couple comments here. Daughter of the Most High said Muslims are going to react with a straw man, which, by the way, would be a fantastic emoji. Indeed, it would. I am writing that down. We definitely need to have a straw man emoji. John Wilson said, I just feel so at home with you lot, a really special family you are. It's very, very sweet and kind of you, John Wilson. I know it's not explicitly about me, but about everyone in the audience, but feel really blessed to have such a comment. And then finally from Nicodemus, what? No blaming ancient Greeks for everything in current events today. And Chris Page says it right. Yeah, exactly. We blame modern Greeks. You got to get it right. Got to get it right. We're going to blame modern Greeks like Nicodemus for everything that is wrong in the world.
All right, we're going to start with the God in the room, essentially. The huge issue of the fact that Muhammad did not worship Allah. The God of the Kaaba did not think that his God was the God of the Kaaba when he began his career calling people to monotheism. The God of his monotheism was not Allah. Allah was a pagan god with 3 pagan goddess daughters. Muhammad called people to worship Al-Rab, who was he thought was the Jewish and Christian God. So we have a stark contrast, and this is expressed explicitly in Al-Kafirun. Now, listen to this very carefully. It begins say. The say was certainly added later to deflect from the fact that it's more of a statement and should not be a direct quote from Allah. But at this stage, Muhammad wasn't careful about making things coherent quotes. He had not yet developed the Quran directly from Allah, perfect ancient book theology. That would come later. And so the say was interjected here as it was in a number of places, but is forgotten in a lot of places too, which makes the Quran very inconsistent. But here's a place where it was remembered. Say o kafirun. That's the disbelievers is usually how it's translated. This is a word that was borrowed from Syriac or Aramaic and has a slight Mohammedan meaning applied to it. But again, this is a phrase of the monotheist that he's using here. Those who reject, the rejectors, deniers, coverers up of belief of the monotheistic God. So he's saying to the Quraysh, say, O Kafirun, I do not serve what you serve. And you are not serving ones like the serving ones, right? Of what I serve. So you're not worshipers, you're not servers of what I serve. And I am not a serving one of what you served, and you are not serving ones of what I serve. For you is your religious code, that's al-Din, and for me is my religious code. And al-Din is a word that was in use among Christians, possibly among Jews as well, but I know among Christians, of Syria, but was originally borrowed from the Persian language in a Persian religious context, and then was used in context to Christian contexts as well. In contrast to the Deen of the Zoroastrians versus the Deen of the Christians versus the Deen, that sense originally filtered through Christianity and into Arabic, but the original word is Persian. Now, notice what it is saying here. It's a very, very important statement. Do the people of Mecca worship Muhammad's God? Yes or no, Thaddeus?
They do not.
at all
Correct.
in any sense. In no way.
Yes.
Does Muhammad worship any god that the people of Mecca worship?
No, I mean, not if we're taking the biographies seriously.
Well, not if we're taking the statement seriously. That's the thing. They're not. If you go for the biographies, they do worship the same God because they worship Allah. They have Allah in common. So you ought to get the same accusation that you do later, that I do not worship the extra ones that you worship. I do not associate any with Allah. Should never say that you do not worship what I worship, which is what is being said here. You put
yeah, just to clarify, the reason I mentioned the biographies is
Yeah.
I don't think you can get Mecca just from the surah, right? You
oh, well, yeah, that's true.
Okay.
But the people he's talking to,
Yes.
right?
Okay. That's fair. Yes.
Yeah. So the people he is talking to, these are not people who worship the same God that he does.
Correct.
So whoever he's talking to, they're not people who worship his God at all. So this would mean that if they, and it is what, it's not an it. Yeah, it does say what, it doesn't say who. This is a mistake in Allah's grammar that frequently happens. There is a distinction between what and who in Arabic, and Allah is very poor at making this distinction. So he often says, he also calls himself an it and a what instead of a who. But
just being truthful. He's just having some rare honesty. I mean,
yeah. And that is what is happening here. He's calling himself an it and a what, as per usual. So remember that until this point, historically speaking, there are interpolations that come later because Muhammad was constantly sticking new things in to things that he'd already revealed. So there are interpolations, things stuck in that talk about Allah, but these are all later things. And usually in the Tafsir, it tells us that they're later. It says that this part was the first part that was revealed in a lot of these sources. And these are all portions that do not have the name Allah. Why? Because Al-Rab is not Allah at this point. They are separate deities. And remember, Muhammad was not early on worshiping at the Kaaba. He was worshiping in someone's house, and they were worshiping out in wadis outside of the town. They did not worship at the Kaaba. And there are excuses given for this, like, oh, they couldn't worship there until so-and-so converted. And then they couldn't worship there until so-and-so converted. They couldn't do this until this person had converted. But we also have explicit statements that Muhammad was under protection of his own clan and could worship at the Kaaba. He didn't worship at the Kaaba early on because his God was not the God of the Kaaba. Now, what it's called when you combine two gods together, it's called syncretism. Mm-hmm. And Islam is a syncretic religion between Arab paganism and portions of heretical Christianity and Judaism. It is a syncretic religion. So the God of Islam is an amalgamation of the ideas of the God of the Jews and the God of the Christians together with the God of the pagans. At this point, he is not yet a syncretic God. At this point, guess what he is? He is Al-Rab only. That's why he says there you cannot find a single accusation of association in the Quran until about 618 or so. We are dealing here with this earlier period in which we have no accusations of shirk because no one was doing shirk. Some people were worshiping the God who is truly God, and some people worshiping a pantheon of false gods. That pantheon of false gods included the God named Allah, who had three daughters, Alat, Manat, and Al-Uzza. Okay? This is very, very clear when you carefully read the Quran. That's why I keep on emphasizing. You guys need to practice careful reading. contextual reading, because the Quran is set up to trick you. That's why Surah 2 is put way at the beginning, so that you'll read it first. So, now,
Well, I mean, it's put way at the beginning because it's long. But
well, the reason that they chose that organization, they could have chosen an organization that was kind of sort of chronological. They could have at least grouped
yeah,
all
they certainly could have.
together. They deliberately did not do that to get ideas in your head when you're moving through it that would then pollute early sections with late theology.
So Andrew Martin says, I disagree with your proposal here, Mary, as Muhammad shows that his tribe and himself were worshiping the same idol in the Kaaba.
So Muhammad was worshiping this idol before he decided to call everyone to monotheism. Then he left off worshiping the idol for a good period of time. At the time that the satanic verses were revealed, that was also the time that Muhammad identified his god Al-Rab and said that that's actually Allah. And then he started worshiping at the Kaaba like everyone wanted him to. And his initial thing was, okay, Allah is Al-Rab, and also the three daughters. They aren't his daughters, but they are three exalted cranes who are intermediates, and you can pray to them, and they will help lift your prayers to Allah. So it's great. You can go ahead and do this. And he got such a backlash from his own people that he abandoned the three goddesses, but he kept Allah equals Al-Rab, and he kept the worship at the false stone for the rest of Islam. And that's actually, you'll find that the conflict between Muhammad and the people of the Quraysh escalated when he was both reviling their gods, their other gods, and also insisting that he can worship at the Kaaba. All the stuff that shows this conflict between him and other people at the Kaaba, this is all very late. It's shortly before he starts making friends with people in Medina and deciding that he's going to run away there. It was during that specific time. So yeah, he did try to seize the Kaaba worship and declared that the Kaaba was a place of legitimate worship, and made up the story of Ishmael and Abraham and everything else. This is all from Muhammad. He made these things up in this period around 618, when he was trying to make nice with the Quraysh, but really ended up causing deeper fractures. He did attract more converts to himself, but at the same time made certain other folks even angrier at him. So yes, he would say that, like I said, it is a syncretic religion. He combined the pagan Allah with Al-Rab and said they were the same God, and made up stories to support this. But he did not do this until a number of years into his career. At this point, he is not even a prophet yet. At this point, he might not have even named himself as a warner, although the first thing he does is, arise and warn and all of that. But you will find, again, that there is a progression of that. First, I am only a warner, I am only a warner, I am only a reminder, over and over and over again. And then I am only a warner, but that can also mean I'm a prophet. And that was the second stage. I'm only a warner. It means that even though I don't do miracles, I'm still a prophet. That is the second stage. So Muhammad actually did have his Quran written down in pieces from the very beginning. If you carefully read the text, people were reading off of pieces of paper, which is why you have the preservation of things like this, of him declaring that his God is not worshipped by any of the kafirun, who were the people of Mecca who worshipped Allah. This is there because he couldn't get rid of it. He could only recontextualize it. Now, there were a lot of surahs that were ditched later on after he died, and probably that he managed to suppress during his lifetime. But the popular ones, he couldn't just tell people, "Oh, I wish you'd stop reciting that." He was only able to bury certain ones. So.
Mm-hmm. So a couple comments here. Jack Ray says this was the early days of investment. There was no profit yet. I think that is a completely accurate statement. Ari the Believer wants to know why Mojab is taking off his shirt, please. He is trying to distract you with his dawa so that you won't hear what Mary has to say. I believe that is what is going on there. Protestant Believer asks a very important question. How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop Quran? Maybe we'll have to make a Tootsie Roll Pop Quran to find out. Not quite sure how that would work. Maybe you soak the paper in melted syrup that you then harden into the lollipop. I don't know. If you got ideas of how to do that, let me know. Morkay says, if I donated $1 for every lie Muslims tell, this channel would be worth billions. I think you are underestimating there a bit, Morkay. Now, if you said if every lie that Muhammad Hijab tells, that might only amount to billions. But if you're talking about every Muslim everywhere, you got to be in the trillions or quadrillions range for sure. And let's get this 50 gifted memberships from earlier from Jack Ray out of the way as well.
Early, and this is indeed a sign, yet most of them are not believers. Give alone to Allah, give alone to Allah. Ride the wings of Gabriel, give alone to Allah.
Jack Ray with a mighty loan to Allah, 50 gifted memberships, greatly increasing the number on this channel, and I suppose unlocking a few more custom emojis for us. I had a few open spots already, but now presumably a few more even. Before we get back to Mary, John Wilson with a very important thought. I've thought on occasion that I would like to disagree with Mary. Then again, when reason raises its head, I think it best not or be blown out of the water. Fair words of warning for anyone who wants to disagree with Mary there. Let's see what she has to say.
Well, I'm working on getting a coherent, because remember, my strategy throughout this has been, what is our evidence for what Muhammad really believed in the early days? Because there are so few ahadith from this era. So few ahadith. It is so incredibly rare to have anything from this stage except these really vague things, and then these things that are clearly ridiculously embroidered legends, right? They're these tiny nuggets, and that's all. What's under there, what's being hidden. And when you read the Quran, it becomes very evident that what's being hidden is that his God is Al-Rab, absolutely never called Allah for years and years and years. Years and years and years. And this is so incredible and so damning. So I want Church in Morocco to explicitly say what you disagree with me about so that I can address it, because you said that you disagree with something that I'm saying, that's something that Muslims say, but I'm not sure what you think that Muslims say. Well, yes, Khadijah did push Muhammad to say that, but part of the problem with the story that we get is we have this period where Muhammad taught in secret and didn't say that he was a prophet. And we also have Waraqah himself saying that if if I live until you become like visible or become like come out as a prophet, then I will support you. What this means is Waraqah had to have died before Muhammad labeled himself a prophet, because he talks about, I will support you if I'm alive then, and then in context we learn that he's dead. So the story that we're getting is not consistent. Waraqah is not alive at that time, and that is put into Waraqah's mouth, right? This is a sign to Waraqah to help bolster Muhammad's image. But Waraqah is dead and in the ground by the time Muhammad begins spreading the story about Waraqah supposedly supporting him. Because he wouldn't need to say that I would support you if I lived that long, if Waraqah supported him and lived that long. So that's another problem. This unknown time between his demonic cave encounter and his public prophethood is an enormous problem, because the earliest surahs clearly have Muhammad as a public warner. So there's this time of years that lapse between when he had some sort of scary experience in a cave and he's suddenly saying that he's getting special messages that everybody needs to listen to, and they all need to listen to him. And the number of years is unclear. It's usually 3. Sometimes it's like 7 or 8. So it is. What I am not saying is that the typical story, Muhammad was 40 when this happened, after 3 years this happened, after this happened, after this, that holds together. I believe that the farther you go back into Muhammad's early career, the less certainty you can have about the lengths of time and the exact things that he was saying, and that it was suppressed on purpose. Because what we do have from that time where he begins to be public, he's public here, he's beginning to be public, he's declaring things, it does not match later Islam. It does not match what Muhammad would say even 10 years after this point. He is giving a different religion, a different salvation, a different God. And that is that Islam's gone. Muhammad denied that Allah is his God. In this surah, he denies that his God is Allah. And later he says his God is Allah. And that's insane.
So we did have some other very light pushback from Alexander. Come on, Mary, let's be real. Muhammad believes whatever gives him power and women.
It took him a while to be corrupt. He was always wrong. He was always a nut. But he wasn't deeply corrupt at first. He became more and more corrupt, just as he was given over to his perversions. Just like the Bible says that you will be, that if you chase after the flesh, eventually God will give you over to sin. And that's exactly what happened to Muhammad. What we see is a guy who had some good intentions but was not a prophet, who convinced himself that he had the salvation for his group, the salvation for his people, and became more and more corrupt over the time. And you see these moments of clarity in the ahadith where Muhammad knows that he is going to burn in hell forever, and he's standing, trembling, sweating, all the color completely out of his face, white as a sheet, in terror because he sees clouds in the sky. And he continues to pace and shake and breathe and have a literal panic attack that he cannot hide from anyone until the rain comes, because he thinks that it is the punishment of Allah coming to get him. And I need to specify him, because I want you to read all of Surah 6 over and over and over again. He talks about those kinds of smitings from Allah and assures everyone that the people who are of Allah will not grieve and they will not sorrow when these things happen. But here's Muhammad shaking. Why? Because he knows he's a false prophet. He knows he's going to burn in hell. So,
and do have to comment here briefly from Una. I have a number of other comments, but we'll wait till after Mary's next segment here. But I want to get this one out right away. Mahmoud must have a serious crush on you, Thaddeus, and I do agree. But sorry, Mahmoud, I am taken and you're not my type, so find someone else to crush on. Thanks. All right, let's continue with the main event, Mary.
Okay. So we have here, and I told you that we're also going to talk about how the Quran is fundamentally pagan in the way that it functions, because it came from a pagan mind. And so a lot of different surat have special benefits that give you rewards if you chant them like a magical spell and a magical charm. This is part of the paganism of Islam and the white magic that is just imbues every aspect of Islam. You constantly have to say magical spells to prevent bad things from happening and to gain special benefits, powers, and rewards. So, between this surah and 112, supposedly one is equal to a quarter of the Quran and the other is equal to a third of the Quran in rewards to recite it. Another tradition clarifying that this one is the one that's worth a quarter. This follows the pattern of Muhammad's teaching of difficult things being considered to be very meritorious only for an extremely simple and time-saving alternative to yield the same benefits. The skill becoming knowledgeable and to know the tricks, such as here, where you learn how very little the Quran actually needs to be recited in order to get most of the benefits. So again, this huge mountainous thing is held up for you that you'll get all these benefits if you recite the Quran. Oh, you can recite the Quran, or you can just recite these little 6 verses, very short, and you can get the benefits of reciting a whole quarter of it. This is among the preferred surat for recitation and prayer, both in its reward and because of its brevity. While Muhammad was saying that reciting this surah absolves shirk, which is purported to be the unforgivable sin, while 112 makes paradise obligatory for him. Or, according to a different narration that is less theologically problematic, this surah forgives all sins without specifying which. But notice, makes paradise obligatory for him. So if you know the trick, if you know the secret, if you have the insider knowledge, you will know that if you recite 112, Allah is forced to send you to Jannah. According to a tradition of Al-Qurtubi, that is because this works like a medicine and extracts all hypocrisy. This surah is especially recommended for bedtime recitation. One of the most impressive magical properties attributed to the recitation of the surah is found in a narration of Jubair, who said that even though he was not wealthy and would leave on journeys as the least provisioned and ugliest in outfitting, Muhammad taught him to say the surah on the trip in order to make him the best dressed and best provisioned of all for the duration of the journey. One would think that the armies of Islam could have marched with no supplies at all had they only realized the benefits that Jubair knew and told everyone about.
This is magic, right? It doesn't have anything to do with the content of the surah. Because I don't think there's anything in the surah about how to dress, right?
Correct. It's just white magic.
Okay. Just checking, just making sure that's what it's claiming. That the reading the surah magically makes him dress better.
Yep. Well, it just makes his clothes magically better suddenly. His clothes are all nice.
Oh, okay. So it transforms the clothes as opposed to his sense of style.
Right. Only for the duration of the journey, though. Once he gets there, it just turns into rags again. So apparently nobody can see that he was wonderfully outfitted during his journey, I guess. All right. So I am...
Maybe it's like the Emperor's new clothes.
Again. Mahmoud, we know it's you. Stop it. Now, so supposedly the Quraysh at this time offered to worship Muhammad's God for a year if Muhammad would worship their gods for a year. Though the grammar doesn't demand this, the second repetition, and you are not the serving ones of what I serve, is interpreted to be the future. They will never worship what Muhammad does. This would give us a present, past, future format. I do not serve what you serve, and you are not serving of the ones that I serve. That would be, you are not serving ones of what I serve, so you're not the worshipers of what I serve. And that would be present. And then past, and in one particular declaration, this was the future, but this actually doesn't make grammatical sense, so that particular narration just is wrong. Anyway, it says, I am not a serving of one of what you served. So that's past tense. And then what is read as future is the last verse, and you are not or will not be the serving ones of what I serve. And that's legit. That's grammatically legitimate. You can do that if you want to. But he could have actually added particles to make it clear that this is future. But most likely it's just repetition.
Yeah, Muhammad, Right.
Yeah.
So 3 and 5 are the same, right? They're the same Arabic words.
It is exactly the same Arabic, correct.
Okay.
But the imperfect can be considered to be either present or future. But if you had wanted to be clear, if Allah had wanted to have, clear signs, he would have added the sa particle to make it clearly future. And there's
Gotcha.
another particle too that it could be as well. But there could have been clarification. So this is a legitimate reading, but I do not think it is a likely one. All right. If this is future, it would become a false prophecy because the Quraysh do indeed convert at the end at the tip of a sword. So if this is future, which a lot of the folks want to read it as, it is a false prophecy of Allah preserved in the Quran. Also, as noted before, it's a what rather than who for out. It's grammatical deficiency. Allah does not know that he should be referred to himself as a person fairly often. Instead, gives himself object words. So, and again, keep in mind, in the context of we will worship your God for a year if you worship our gods for a year, for him to go, you don't worship the God that I worship. It's very clear. They do not worship Al-Rab. Everybody knows they worship Allah, who is God of the Kaaba. But who don't they worship? Al-Rab. Yes, that surah is very confusing. But if you realize that Muhammad was just mad and he babbles when he's mad, it helps a lot. There are a bunch of places where Muhammad loses his temper, and usually a lot of stuff goes. Like the rhyme gets bad, everything gets really clunky, his elusive language gets really stupid. And this is one of the only places where you plural are disbelievers, because you'll find in all the late stuff, you plural are always followers of Muhammad. They're always the Mohammedans or the Muslims, right? They're always his people, are you plural. The fact that it is that you is, and then they, third person, are sometimes hypocrites. Hypocrites can either be you or they, depending on the circumstances. But you don't use you plural for people who completely disbelieve in Muhammad's God and in Muhammad. What you get is they. And again, this shows the development that these usages, these conventions, these Quranic conventions don't exist yet because Muhammad hadn't made them up yet. There is a development of Quranic usage and technical vocabulary and norms that have to be introduced and made up. So, this you, me, actually really meaning non-Muslims, becomes misinterpreted in several places in the early surahs by people who have been primed by later usage to assume that it means Muslims. It's actually kind of funny. We should run into this today. So, now we are ready to move on to the next surah, unless you have something to interject.
I could interject something here. Carol B says, wow, Mahmoud is a professor now, like Sheikh Uthman ibn Farouk. He has a master's in hadith and things. I think that probably is how Mahmoud became a professor. He got his master's in hadith and things, just like Uthman. About 100% as legitimate of a degree, I'm sure. Una says says he's a reverse stripper, meaning Muhammad hijab. You pay him to get dressed. That's why he was on the screen. He desperately needs some donations so that he can get dressed and stop disgusting us all. And also following up on earlier from Snoopy, how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Quran Tootsie Roll Pop? Well, only one, since it is extremely shallow. Very nice, very nice. Next surah.
So Allah means the highest. It is not the same thing as Allah. Now, there was kind of this question early on. Somebody posted a question. There was a question early on. It's obvious that Allah is a masculine of Alat, who is better attested as a goddess in early writings than Allah is. The question is, okay, so who is this Alat? Does Alat mean the highest one, or does it mean a female goddess? And the reason that there was a question is because later on Arabic would have a T added to the ending of a masculine word to make it feminine. But in the form Alat, you don't have il halat. It's clearly from Alat, but we actually can confirm from various inscriptions that that was because the word developed before Arabic had simplified to the singular rule, and this is a holdover from earlier usage because it was used for this goddess. Therefore, the masculine form being derived from the same source actually just means the god and does not mean the highest one. So that took quite a bit of digging to clear out, but it was a pagan title used for pagan gods. Just to be clear, it was never used for a monotheistic god until Muhammad syncretized the pagan Allah with a monotheistic God. So, Al-Allah, and it has the Hamza in the middle too. It's one of the most important surahs to recite. It is actually literalized, the highest one, Allah being the highest, was actually literalized by one narration. So Allah, in this story, he has an angel called Ezekiel. And this angel Ezekiel has 18,000 wings. And the distance between one wing and the next is a journey of 500 years. Allah doubled the number of wings and then ordered him to fly to traverse the whole span of the throne. And though he, Ezekiel, flew for the length of 20,000 years, he did not reach the top of any of the legs of the throne. So Allah doubled the number of wings again, and the angel flew for 30,000 years with the same result. Then Allah told him that he would never have the strength to reach the top of the legs, to which the angel says, "Glory be to my Lord, the Most High." And that is quite literally the Most High. Why is he the highest? Because you can't fly that high. He's literally high. He's very tall. His throne's so big that Allah is super, super high up. So
well, he's at least 90 feet tall, right?
Yeah, he's at least, well, his throne is apparently like enormous, although Allah, well, he's actually taller than 90 feet because 90 feet is the size to which Adam was shrunk down after he was thrown down because his head was hitting Jannah.
Gotcha.
So, that's an important detail. But we think, it's possible that Allah could be really, really small relative to the size of his throne. It doesn't actually say. He's just really, really high up. His throne's super high, but it doesn't say how big he is on this. So he could be a tiny little Allah on a throne the size of the rest of the universe, right? So yes, very, very deep theology.
Very deep theology. It just
sends shivers up my spine.
I mean, who could come up with something like this? It must be from God.
And
Mike Martin says he just came from AP, and David would appreciate that. Welcome aboard. Of course, you should have been here from the start, but we'll welcome you in anyway. Appreciate that. And just a quick comment to our so-called Muslim in the chat, who is not a Muslim in any way. He is not submitting. He is creating a religion of his own accord. He's in a religion of one. But I told him to get on topic or he would be put in timeout. His response was that he's responding to a specific point. No, nothing you said had anything to do remotely with anything that was said in the presentation ever. I am not an idiot. You've been talking about how Islam is peaceful and doesn't teach violence and blah, blah, blah. Has nothing to do with today's presentation. So you need to put in the chat, I am listening to your audio, or I will know that you don't even have your sound on, and I will put you in timeout. So again, Cartona, put in the chat right now, I have my sound on, or you will be timed out. All right, Mary.
Oh, and a further point, it sounds less like Allah if you pronounce it correctly, which I am not doing. So that is another point. I am uh, akla. I can't do it. Sorry, guys. Um, so uh, moving on, Al-Razi, he rejects this this specific hadith, and he places an anachronistic endorsement of the Ash'ari creed in the mouth of the companion Abu Aqil Labid ibn Rabia, declaring that to glorify the name of your Lord consists of two parts. Firstly, not to insult people who invoke other than Allah so that they don't insult Allah, as Mahmud has not learned, so he is in defiance of Allah, according to 6:108. And secondly, here's the Ash'ari part, that glorification consists of appropriately expressing the transcendence of Allah Almighty from everything that is not befitting of Him in His essence, His attributes, in His actions, in His names, and in His rulings. As for His essence, glorification is to believe that it is not among the substances and accidents. So His essence is other than being and the state of the being, which makes no sense at all. As for his attributes, glorification is to believe that they are not created, finite, or deficient, yet Islam teaches that his attributes are indeed deficient because his wrath is absolutely deficient because his mercy can kick its butt. So he's got really crappy wrath because his mercy is so much stronger than it. But okay, all right, fine. And clearly his mercy would not be infinite as a created thing because it doesn't extend to everyone. He creates people for hellfire, so his mercy is not, as a real attribute, is not infinite, and his wrath is clearly not infinite because, again, it's overcome by mercy. But let's keep moving. As for his actions, glorification is to believe that he is an absolute owner. So no one has a right to object to him in any matter. So Al-Razi is just like, I'm going to pretend that Muhammad was an Ash'ari and just make stuff up. Very nice. Yeah, Jack Ray's like, wait, an essence substance distinction? Yes, I know. It's utterly insane. Makes absolutely no sense. Like, he's just pooping out words at this point. So Jibril told Muhammad that saying this phrase, inside or outside of prayer, the phrase that Allah is the Most High, receives a weight of good deeds on his scale heavier than the throne. We just talked about how big that throne is. The throne, the footstool, and the mountains of the world. Because when it is spoken, Allah says, my servant has spoken the truth. I am above everything, and there's nothing above me. Bear witness, O my angels, that I've forgiven him, and I will admit him to paradise. When he dies, Michael will visit him every day. When the day of resurrection comes, he will carry him on his wing and make him stand before Allah, the Most High. He will say, oh Lord, let me intercede for him. He will say, I have let you intercede for him, so take him to paradise. So watch this, everybody. Allah is the Most High.
Mm-hmm.
Allahu al-Akla. There we go. Now, guess what? I'm going to be in paradise now as one of the sex slaves of a man because that's the only thing that men can be or women can be. And my rewards are the weight of good deeds that's heavier than the throne, footstool, and the mountains of the world. Come on.
Yeah, that's a lot of good deeds. I think that's probably more good deeds than any person would naturally do on their own. So singularly saying that phrase is better than being a Muslim and doing all the good deeds your entire life.
Yep. Because again, keep in mind that this is a religion of charms, of tricks, of secret knowledge, and this is this Gnostic angle, the knowledge of the unseen. Ah la la, ooh la la, so Jack Ray says. It's all of this kind of nonsense that really permeates this silly religion. This is what you get in Islam. So I really want to emphasize the point of this white magic religion. It's very important. So yes, apparently more the person's good deeds can weigh more than the throne and the footstool and the mountains of the world, in spite of how huge that throne is. Yes. And yes, Allah.
These people have not enough substance.
Apparently his scale has to be even bigger or more stronger than his throne, since you can stick something that weighs more than his throne on it. Very important.
Very important.
Mike, if you know which one that is, I'd like you to toss it on here because that sounds very funny. He says that David Wood explains in his short video with brother Rahid, but I don't know that one. So I would really like to see it. I missed it somehow. So.
Oh, good point here from Vagabond. In the Bible, Satan wants to be the Most High.
Yeah, he wants to be like the Most High. Yep. I am where he brags that I am the Most High. Yep.
Yep. And then we got Allah here declaring that whoever says he is the Most High will be rewarded greatly. Interesting.
Yep.
For sure.
So here is the actual surah. It says, glorify the name of thy Lord, the Most High, the one who created, then leveled. Do we all remember the leveling? What's being leveled here?
The mountains?
Yeah, or the earth itself. Let's see. Let's see if I go into more detail. Nope, I don't. So I'll talk about it now. So if you remember, the mountains becoming perfectly flat at the end of time is a symbol that's the end of days, because Muhammad misunderstood Isaiah 40, which was the only scripture that Wadaqa seems to have had. A small portion of Isaiah 40, not the whole thing. And this seems to be colored by a Zoroastrian belief that in creation, the forces, the divine forces involved in creation, specifically took the action of leveling out the earth for people to live on it. And that's why there's the weird detail about the mountains being pegs, because the earth started moving. So if the world being flat and spread out is really good for mankind, why is it that Allah stuck mountains in it, which kind of suck? These are people who live in the mountains. They know that the mountains suck. They know that the mountains cause the water to come through and nearly wash away their little tiny backwater village every so often. They know that the mountains have very poor soil and bad, it's bad for their animals. They know the mountains aren't a good place. They live in them. So if spreading out and flattening is good, why does Allah have mountains? Well, it's because of that silly fish Noon who keeps wiggling around. And so the mountains are pegs to hold it still so it will stop moving. And then at the end of time, when perfection is re-achieved, or before destruction or whatever, Allah is going to do a recapitulatory act of creation by completely flattening out the mountains. So to Muhammad, having this little bit of flattening earth in creation thing from Zoroastrian in his head over here, and then reading about some mountains going down and valleys raising up over here, together, those two things in his mind got the flat leveled and then completely flattened earth theology or doctrine of the Quran, which is evident here and is a very, very early theology. It's very early doctrine. So he is the one who created, then leveled, the one who determined and then guided, the one who brought forth the pasturage, and then made it black red stover. We don't really have a word for this Arabic word, because where English developed, it wasn't very common that the land would turn, like all the grasses would shrivel and dry up. So I use stover instead, which is like the leftovers after a harvest. It's stubble or the stover of corn. So I use that word because we don't have a word for the vegetation of a dried up pasture, because that never happens in England. But that's what the word means there. So he brings forth the pastures, the green things to eat, and then he makes it this black red dried up vegetation, right? And sometimes it also means scum. So it's like the dead vegetation that washes up after a flood into the rocks or whatever. That stuff would also be called this by the same word. So sometimes it's translated as scum instead, but it's not as good a translation. But anyway, I want you to notice that the doctrinal point that Muhammad's God is the speaker of the Quran, it hasn't been established yet. So they forgot to say here, I mentioned that the other say was probably added. Here, glorify the name of thy Lord Most High. That should be instructions to Muhammad, or Muhammad instructing his people to do this, one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's singular, so it should actually be someone instructing Muhammad to do this. But it's another grammatical deficiency. There's also a variant that is attributed to Muhammad, to Ibn Abbas, and to Ali by various narrators. Glory be to my Lord Most High. And then Ibn Umar said, do not say by the name of Allah, for the name of Allah is the Most High, according to a hadith, which is very funny. And that is an issue, because remember, whenever we talked about the supposed first surah, that it talks about in the name of thy Lord. What the heck is the name of thy Lord in that surah? Does he ever get a name?
Nope.
The only name he could have gotten is the one who created. The one who created is the name of his God, or else his God just doesn't have a name. Well, here, Ibn Umar is saying that this is his name. This is his proper name. Glorify the name of thy Lord, which is the Most High. The name is the Most High. He's understanding it that the God of Muhammad gets his name here. So, there's also an important point. Allah is the one who determined, then guided. Guiding in the Quran and in the sources is clearly contrasted with another word that means to lead astray. There are those who are guided and those who are led astray. So this expresses that Muhammad is the one who guides. But because of later fate theology that holds Muhammad responsible not just for guidance, but also for misguidance, for making people astray, there are all kinds of attempts to make guiding into something negative. Because later you can have that Allah is the one, or Al-Harb is the one who determines and guides, and you can have a God who guides truly only, but not everyone follows that God. But not if you have fate theology. If you have this fate theology, then Allah causes everyone to go wherever they happen to go. So if he guides, and it doesn't say that he leads astray, that's a problem, because the astrayness of people is also his responsibility in the fate theology. So the exegetes jump through all kinds of silly hoops to try to make it sound like whenever Allah guides, he also misguides. If that is true, all of you Muslims are in massive amounts of trouble. If Allah's out here, whenever it says Allah guided people, it actually means he's sending them to hell. You guys are in big trouble. So, it continues on. We shall make thee, that's singular, recite so you shall not forget, except what Allah wills. Indeed, he knows what is open and what is hidden. He shall ease thee to the easing, therefore remind, if the reminder profits. He shall remember the one who fears Allah, but the wretched one shall avoid it, the one who shall burn in the great fire. This is not the word for hellfire yet. Then he shall not die therein and not live. So, verse 6, there's a hadith that says, when Gabriel would come down to the prophet with the revelation, Gabriel would not finish the end of the verse until he had spoken it to the prophet about the beginning, for fear that the prophet had spoken it. This is a slight mistranslation, I didn't fix it. Until the prophet had begun to speak the beginning of the verse, for fear that he would forget it. So this verse was revealed. We will cause you to recite, and you will not forget anything after that. I have taken care of it for you. So that's supposed to be the context of this. Don't worry. You're going to remember everything. I'll take care of it for you. Guess what? Let's look at this. Let's look at the rhyme here and look at the line length. Can you see, everyone, what was very obviously added, except what Allah wills? So, Allah made a promise, and then later Muhammad had to modify this promise because it wasn't kept. That is a clear insertion line length, prime, meaning, everything is so. Look at the difference in the line lengths, everybody. This is so obviously an insertion. So he declared that it became obvious that Muhammad was forgetting. So it's like, except what Allah wills, it was shoved in there. So now this is read such that, therefore remind if the reminder profits. This is not a conditional if, it's not an uncertain if, and it's also read by the exegetes with the meaning, therefore remind whether or not the reminder profits, is how it's read. But the meaning, even though it's not conditional, the meaning is clearly the opposite, that you should only remind if the reminder will profit, not if the reminder would profit, but if the reminder will profit. So it's the idea that the exegetes force this to be a positive, that you're going to remind everyone, is very much contrary to the sense. What this is doing is giving Muhammad permission not to tell anyone that he should follow his God, Al-Harb. And also notice that it's Allah wills. He's not called Allah yet. So very clearly an interpolation. But this section here through, and this is this entire thing is the later section. This is the earliest part from the earliest period. Then you kind of have this next 3 to 9 section, which is the next chunk, and then it continues and is later still, right? The one who fears Allah, that part's later still, because remember, only the earliest part determines to which period of Muhammad's revelation the entire thing is kind of assigned in the chronological order, because it's hard to cut up the little pieces and find them in order. But right here, this is giving him the permission to not remind people who would be offended by Muhammad and whose offense would threaten Muhammad's safety, basically. So therefore remind if the reminder profits. This is a later bit that's telling him, basically excusing him for the fact that he was afraid of people and he wasn't going out of his way to offend people. He was going out of his way to not offend people for a while. Why? Because he only has to remind them if the reminder profits. Then it goes on, he shall remember the one who fears Allah, but the wretched one shall avoid it. The one who shall burn in the great fire, then he shall die therein and not live. Certainly, who succeeded is he who purified himself and remembered the name of his Lord and prayed. Nay, you prefer the life here below, and end is better and everlasting. Indeed, this is surely in the former pages, the pages of Abraham and Moses. Now, both 14 and 15 have secret meanings in the tafsir that we'll go to in a moment that cannot be understood from just reading this. So the question is, are these clear signs? Do you have any idea who the dude is who purified himself here?
Well, Mary, when you have to go to the tafsir to understand something, that's indication that it's extremely clear.
If you think it's anybody, you're like, well, I guess that's Muhammad, or just general believers. You would never think that it's one of Muhammad's specific followers in its original context.
No, certainly not, right? I mean, in theory, this is supposed to be God's pre-existent word written for all people in all times, and yet somehow a pronoun with no identifier refers to a specific person at the time of Muhammad. Very, very consistent, very logical, I think. Mary is distracted or something?
Sorry, I killed myself. I said 1 second, but then I hadn't even turned it on yet. All right, so verse 6, other verses around this kind of cause this to be misread. It's very clear that when it was originally revealed, he's talking about the people who aren't following him. He's talking about the non-Muslims. You, plural, wasn't yet strictly Muslims. But because it would become Muslims, the exegetes force themselves to read it as the Muslims prefer life here below. But you're supposed to be, as a follower of Muhammad, the ones who don't prefer life here below. So and that's also not the natural reading. But again, this is one of the things, the usage became more strict and technical over time, causing people to misread this. Now, this verse here is probably the earliest emergence of the doctrine of the book. And there's a great narration from Abu Dhar to go along with this first declaration of the doctrine of the book. Surely this, indeed, this is surely in the form of pages, the pages of Abraham and Moses. So what exists in the pages of Abraham and Moses?
The same revelation that's being given here, right? Or the same signs.
In this particular verse, it has to be the same saying has to be in those former pages. So
correct.
The narrowest reading would be, nay, you prefer the life here below, the end is better and everlasting. You would expect those words in the pages of Abraham and Moses.
Or at least that idea.
Conservative.
Well, I think it's going to have to go back further than just that one sentence realistically. But I would say generously, it doesn't have to be the exact words, but it has to be the idea at least, right? The ideas that are being conveyed there.
We will see what Muhammad himself said about this. So Abu Dhar begins by asking Muhammad how many prophets there are, to which he replies there are 124,000. Then he asks how many are apostles, to which Muhammad says 113. By the way, this last part is considered to be considerably later than the other parts. So this may be the first thing. This may be the first reference to Abraham and Moses or to former writings chronologically, or it may not be, because sometimes this last bit is considered to even be like it can even be considered Medinan. We don't know how late it was, because it's at the very end. It's likely the last thing, but there are times whenever Muhammad goes back to something he hasn't touched and inserts a single verse right in the middle. Like there's a verse just floating there crazily in Surah Al-Baqarah that's the last thing he ever revealed, and it doesn't even fit with the context. He just like farts out a verse all of a sudden in the middle of a recitation, and people frantically write it down because that's what they're doing by this time. So Muhammad then says that there are 313 and the rest of them were prophets. This is a very late form of the story. Abu Dhar was quite free with embroidering things that made him look like he had special knowledge. So the distinction between prophets and apostles, messengers, is incredibly late in Muhammad's career. But anyway, Abu Dhar asked him, was Adam a prophet? Muhammad answered, yes, Allah spoke to him and created him with his hand, O Abu Dhar, for the prophets were Arabs, Hud, Saleh, Shuaib, and your prophet. And then Abu Thalabi is the only person who quotes this portion of this hadith. There are other portions that are quoted by a bunch of different people. Abu Dhar then asked Muhammad how many books Allah has revealed, to which Muhammad replied 104. He revealed 50 pages to Seth, 30 pages to Idris, and Thalabi adds the clarification that this is Enoch, and he was the first to write with the pen, an important Hermetic reference, though of course this is anachronistic. 10 pages to Abraham and 10 pages to Moses before the Torah. He revealed the Torah, the Gospel, the Psalms, and the Furqan. And in this time,
who ate the apple?
Muhammad is supposedly calling this a Furqan at his own revelation, the Furqan, because that was actually the earliest name that was given, but that name was after Muhammad's death.
So just to be clear here, right? Yes. The claim here is that there are many books being revealed. A 50-page book to Seth, a 30-page book to Idris, and so on, in addition to the Torah and the Gospels and the Psalms and the Quran.
Yes.
Interesting, right? Interesting that Muhammad's making this claim. Seems to be just pulled out of nowhere why these particular people got books and other people didn't. How many Muslims today would know that Seth, for example, supposedly had a book?
Very few. They believe that Muhammad taught Adam to write with the pen, oftentimes, but Thalabi says that Enoch was the first to write with the pen. But again, that's a Hermetic reference. Very, very important that this is a Hermetic reference. Hermeticism and Islam are like brothers. Um, Lloyd De Jong, sorry, I keep calling him De Jong. It's my English. Anyway, he is very right about this. They are very, very, very close brothers. So Abu Dhar then asked what are in the pages of Abraham, and Muhammad said they are all parables or similitudes, though the examples he gives are rather proverbs that don't exist in any scripture. So his examples are, it behooves a wise man to have 3 hours, an hour in which he communes with his Lord, an hour in which he holds himself to account, and an hour in which he is alone for the need of food and drink. Then also a wise person, this is a quote, by the way, from the pages of Abraham. A wise person should not travel except for 3 reasons: to prepare for the end, to improve his livelihood, and to enjoy something that is not haram, etc. There are other examples, but they're all not in scripture and just random wise sayings. In response to the same question concerning Moses, Muhammad said that they were all lessons, though these examples seem to be in the vein of theological meditations found in parts of the writings division of the Hebrew scripture and not like the Torah at all, though again, they don't actually match any scripture. One example is, I wonder how one is who's certain of death can rejoice. I wonder how one is who's certain of destiny can be patient. I wonder how one is who sees the world and its up and downs with its people and can be reassured by it. I wonder how one is who is certain of his reckoning tomorrow and can do nothing. So that sounds like it echoes Ecclesiastes or Proverbs in flavor, but doesn't match anything again. And definitely does not sound like the Torah in the least. Then Abu Dhar asked whether they had in their hands from what Allah has secretly communicated to Muhammad. And the meaning of revelation is secret communication. From what Allah has revealed, secretly communicated to Muhammad, anything of what Moses and Abraham had in their hands. And Muhammad replied that verses 14 through 16 are in the former pages, and revealed the last 2 verses as part of the affirmation that they were from the previous revelation. So he says that beginning with certainly, who succeeded is he who purified himself and remembered the name of his Lord and prayed, nay, you prefer the life below, and the end is better and everlasting. In this story, that's what he affirms as having come from the previous revelation. Now, a hadith on the authority of Ibn Abbas, who is a favorite choice for any theological assertion and whose name is often attached to even directly contradictory hadith, asserts that these verses are abrogated in the pages of Abraham and Moses. But another chain has him affirming that they are currently in the pages of Abraham and Moses. Asudi and Qatada agree that the whole surah is in the pages, and Abu al-Aliyah adds that this was in the first pages of the books, while Al-Hassan, that's Ali's son, stated that it is in the first pages of all Allah's book, indicating that the current arrangement of the Quran is an error. Ibn Mardawiyah, or Ibn Mardaweh declares that not only is this entire surah found in the pages of Abraham and Moses, but so is the star from verse 37 to the end.
I just find this very humorous, right? That they're debating over where the surah supposedly fits in this imaginary book. And they have strong disagreements. No, it's at the first pages. No, it's not in the first pages.
Well, it's also in the book of Moses, which is in the Torah. That's in the pages of Moses. So it's got to be in. What is Moses's pages? Well, he has pages before the Torah, but
yeah, he's got 10 pages before, so maybe it's in those 10 pages.
But they're saying that it's there now, that exists. That there's just the
pages of Abraham now too, right? I don't think there's any implication that those 10 pages are lost. I think Muhammad was saying that they have those 10 pages of Moses.
And what's important, what's important here is the fact that, once people kind of realize that they aren't there, they fabricated one hadith and attached Ibn Abbas's name to it, because of course that's what they do. But this is when Muhammad introduced his theology of the heavenly book, from which different prophets got revealed pages. This is the kind of thing that he was saying when he began saying that he has signs in the book. His signs are the book. When he started teaching, and this was a new teaching, notice there's no signs in the book yet in any of this early stuff. All of the other stuff is several years later, and then there's interpolations and this very late addition relative to the other parts in the surah. So there is.
So let me just interject real quick. I think that the sign would be that Muhammad knows about what's in these other books that he's never encountered, and I think that's actually what he's claiming, right? He actually thought that this garbage was in the other books, and that he was receiving miraculous knowledge of it, probably
And
because he was
that's why you
remembering things that he heard in the past and was interpreting that as revelation. But then it turns out to be wrong because memory's not good.
Right. Well, that's why you need to follow him. You need to follow him because he is giving you, because he's telling you to remember Al-Harb. So you need to follow him. And then over time that developed into, not only am I getting these revelations, but they're revelations from this heavenly book. And it's the same book as everyone else. It's the same thing. It's in agreement with what the Jews have, what the Christians have, the book of Moses, the book of Abraham. It's in the first ones. And remember, this actually, you are required to still have the pages of Abraham and Moses. They have to be extant. They have to exist. For any of this to be true, for them to be abrogated in the pages of Abraham and Moses, we still have to have the pages of Abraham and Moses, much less to be currently in the pages of Abraham and Moses. This is like a very, very important point for the veracity of Muhammad as a prophet. Is he giving accurate information about the pages of Abraham and Moses? Do the pages of Abraham even exist? No. The pages of Moses exist. They're the Torah. Is this in the Torah? No. The only hadith claiming that it's not in there is one that was fabricated to cover up the fact that it's not in there. But Muhammad taught, and the Quran says that this is surely in the former pages, the pages of Abraham and Moses. Is Allah lying, saying it's not in there anymore?
You got like 4 Muslims debating exactly where it is in those pages, but they all agree that it's in the pages, right?
So let's keep in mind that this ought to be the first surah, according to one hadith 2, that this ought to be the first one. According to Al-Hassan, Ali's son, this ought to be the beginning of the Quran. And this shows some of the Sunni Shia conflicts over what the Quran is and how it should be put together. So,
and I would say thematically it would not be a terrible start to a book. So it seems plausible enough that it could have been the intended start of the Quran.
Yep. So the freeing of Bilal is in here. And so Cartona, you need to tell us, you supposedly believe in the Quran. So you need to tell us, bring to us the pages of Abraham and Moses that it is currently in, according to the Quran that you believe in. Bring us the pages and show us the words. This is a requirement for you because you say that this is truth. Now.
Yeah, I mean, this guy has no clue about anything, right?
No.
He said, I believe in the Bible, but not the Gospels. Okay. He doesn't even know what's in the Bible, right?
No,
he's claiming that he believes in
it.
This is a guy who has a bunch of ideas that he imagined up one day or over a period of time and have nothing to do with Islam, nothing to do with Christianity, but he calls it Islam and thus distracts people in the chat who are debating him on actual Islam when he believes in some imaginary thing that he created himself that has nothing to do with Islam.
So
he doesn't care. He wouldn't care about any of these sources, Mary. He'd just say that they're invented by the British Empire to trick you.
Well, the Quran is he still believes in. He still believes in the Quran, and the Quran here is saying this. So he needs to account for it.
That's true. The pages is in the Quran, right?
So
indeed,
the word
this
former,
is surely in the former pages, the pages of Abraham
just
and
to
Moses.
be clear, Protestant believer, I translate as former because it means the earlier. Okay, it means the previous earlier, not the ones that are no longer existing, that used to be and no longer are. That's not what the word means. I guess you could possibly understand the English that way, but it doesn't mean the very first pages. It means the earlier pages, like the former people kind of thing, means the earlier people. It doesn't say whether or not they're existing now or not, has no implications on their current existence. But here it is, this is surely in the pages. It absolutely does not mean that this is something that formerly existed and does not now, just to be clear. So wanted to address that. Now, we find out that the circumstances of the one who succeeded and purifies himself is supposed to be Abu Bakr, who freed Bilal. Now, I do want Christians to be careful, because I know that the ahadith are confusing, and a lot of people read Bilal going to Abu Bakr and saying, you got me, you purchased me. If you purchased me for the purpose of your own slave, then put me to work. But if not, let me do the work of Allah, kind of thing. That actually refers to this event. So he was turned into a freed slave. But something that people don't realize is that freed slaves weren't really free. They became clients, similar to the pagan Roman system of clientage, but more so. So you still owed kind of your life's work to that person, but you had more rights over yourself, and you couldn't be sold, were the benefits of becoming a freed slave. But you still had to work for that person like forever and obey them. So it's even less than what a client of a Roman person could have. And so his freedman status was given over to Muhammad, and so he became a servant of Muhammad. So he was technically a freed slave, but freed slaves weren't free to do whatever they wanted. That's not how Islamic slavery worked. Generally speaking, with very few, you became a wali and had a wali. It's a reflexive term for both sides of the relationship. But anyway, continuing on, the narrow circumstances of revelation could never be discovered from the Quran. So to know the original application, one must look beyond the sacred text to recorded tradition. The exegetes assert that this surah was revealed in reference to Abu Bakr buying and manumitting Bilal. Bilal's master, who is Umayyah ibn Khalaf al-Jumanhi, or Abdullah ibn Ju'an, or Abu Sufyan, that's Saqr ibn Harb. It's not the other Abu Sufyan. Whoever it was, he was punishing his slave Bilal because Bilal was a follower of Muhammad and was encouraging others to follow him. Abu Bakr passed by and said, do you torture a slave for knowing his Lord? And notice even here, for knowing who? His Lord. A lot of the ahadith of this early period prefer language of this appropriate to this early period, where the God of Muhammad is his Lord. The master then accused Abu Bakr and Muhammad of corrupting Bilal, so then Abu Bakr offered to buy him, to which the master readily assented. In one version, an unlikely exchange follows in which Abu Sufyan says he is useless, while Abu Bakr says he is extremely valuable, and the settlement is reached where Abu Bakr exchanges one of his slaves for Bilal, then frees Bilal, causing Abu Sufyan to claim that Abu Bakr was destroying his paternal wealth for nothing, because Bilal is worth less because he is black, just to be clear. And in a version, and he's also not a good, strong, hard worker, and he exchanged a good, strong, hard worker. And a version with Umayyah ibn Khalaf, the slave for slave exchange is made, but afterwards Umayyah denigrates Bilal's value. A narration with Abdullah as his master deviates from the others and has Bilal sparking the conflict by attacking the idols of the Quraysh and then being purchased not with another slave, but for the ludicrous sum of £1 of gold. Regardless, Abu Bakr is the righteous man mentioned in the surah, while Umayyah, Abdullah, or Abu Sufyan is the one who rejects Muhammad's message. Now, I do want to point out that this does not indicate an entirely fabricated story, the fact that we don't know who his master is. Instead, if it were an entirely fabricated story, we would have one master, and it would be one of Muhammad's main opponents. I think that Abu Sufyan is almost certainly not the master because he's too prominent. It was one of the two guys who's less important. There's no reason to reassign. There are reasons in oral tradition to reassign a story where to make a bad guy out to be someone who's an important bad guy. This is a process that happens in oral retellings. We don't know which elements are, what actual exchange was made. Certainly it wasn't for a pound of gold. That's silly. But we know kind of the general thrust of the story because that's how oral stories work. And this was an oral story. So now a different hadith records Bilal chiding Abu Bakr, saying, "If you had bought me for yourself, then keep me for yourself. But if you bought me for Allah's sake, then leave me for Allah's work." And again, this uses later terminology. No, Allah. This makes it appear that Abu Bakr did not immediately manumit him, contrary to the narrations of his purchase, but it can be harmonized by concluding that Bilal meant his work as a freed slave, because freed slaves were still lifetime servants of their masters in the Arab and thus Islamic system. So he was his. Note that Bilal is not yet the first Islamic muezzin at this point, as there's no call to prayer until the Medinan period. He would be chosen for that job because of its loud and resonating voice later on. Abu Bakr purchased and manumitted a number of early slave converts, including Amr ibn Fuhayra, whom he bought from his second wife's son, 3 to 5 women whose identities and masters are confused, Zanira or Zaneira the Roman, yet another woman who was another slave who was taken from Christian lands, the sex slave of Umar ibn Khattab or Abu Jahl, and it's unclear whose sex slave she was at this time. Again, probably Umar bin Khattab, because that's the story that they wanted to replace with Abu Jahl. And possibly her slave or daughter, possibly her slave daughter, Haritha, though some sources give the alternative name of, I didn't have the correct name here, but there are 2 different names for give her the alternative name of Haritha. So we don't really know whether or not her name's that or it's her daughter, or if she has a daughter. Base or Umais, of whom little is known, and An Nadia, and she's a slave woman of Banu Nahad, and she's absurdly given a genealogy from tribes other than Banu Nad, even though she's called the one from Banu Nad, including making her a great niece of Khadija on the female slide, and she may be the one with the daughter, who's not named in any source, but is often confused with Ubais. So these other free slaves served Abu Bakr for life, whereas Bilal was turned over to be a servant to Muhammad for life. So,
Yep, so let's pause there for just a second. So Isaac asked, is the cat in cat cam your cat asking for a friend? Absolutely. The various cats that you sometimes see on the cat cam are all one of our 6 cats here.
And I haven't been charging my battery pack, or you would have a dog cam too, because my dog's always here until I let him go eventually, whenever he gets tired of hanging out.
So earlier when you were talking about the good deeds that were larger than Allah's throne, Houston said, so this means that good deeds are a type of energy that could be translated into matter within E equals MC squared. You see, this is a scientific miracle. Muhammad knew that the energy of good deeds was equivalent to matter under the right circumstances or something.
Yep.
And then Earl said, Muslims lie at the drop of the hat because they worship the father of lies. That is very offensive, Earl. How dare you claim that Muslims would drop their hat? All right, let's continue with the next.
All right. Now, it is significant that Abu Bakr is the one who's purchasing these slaves rather than Muhammad. Though Khadija is made to be phenomenally rich in the stories about their marriage, her wealth appears to be exaggerated even in the earliest stories, as she was likely merely the richest marriageable widow at that moment and was demonstrably far from the richest person in all of Mecca at that time. For example, Al-Zubair ibn al-Awam al-Asadi, her brother, built a courtyard, a dar, for locking in his black male African slaves at night so they wouldn't impregnate other slaves or other women. This means that he had enough black slaves. It was worth creating a courtyard just to lock them in to protect his investment in female slaves, though he did share its use with the whole Asadi clan. Khadija was simply not this wealthy. The Shia, however, say that the one who is righteous in the surah is Ali. The righteous one is Ali, because the wary can be read in the superlative, thus making him the best of all of Muhammad's followers. Sunni retort that this is about someone who spent from their own wealth in charity, so this could not describe Ali until after the Muslims became rich, raiding other people, because Ali was raised in Muhammad's house because his father had been bankrupted and had no money of his own. So the Sunni are right here. This is not about Ali. Now, we are ready to move on to the next surah. We are rocking through a whole bunch of surah this time, make us feel like we're really making progress here.
Yep,
So,
and we are right about at 2 hours. I just mentioned this because you said you wanted to limit it to 3.
yep, I want to limit my talking part to 3. Well, we did start like 30 minutes after. I started talking about 30 minutes after, so I might put you a little bit.
Okay, fine. An hour and 45 minutes. I was
Yep.
putting it at 7:15, but you're right. It was closer to 7:30 by the time we actually started.
Yep. So this surah is called the night, and by the night when it covers, this is Allah once again committing shirk, and by the day when it brightly displays that which created the male and the female, indeed your efforts are surely scattered. Now here is a considerably later interpolation. This one's easier to pull apart than some of the other ones as to how late things were, because the other pieces really do cohere better, so the lines are clearer. So as for him who gives the best and bewares and believes true the best, then we shall surely ease him to the easing. And as for him who withholds his and has prosperity and cries lies to the best, then we shall ease him to the hardship. And his wealth shall not prosper him when he perishes. Indeed, upon us is surely the guidance, and indeed for us is the last and the first. So I warned you of a fire flaming, none will burn in it except the most wretched, the one who cried lies and turned away. The weary shall avoid it, the one who gives his wealth to purify himself, and not conferring any grace on any man to be recompensed, except seeking the face of his Lord the Most High, and soon he shall be satisfied. So, moving on. As with the Most High, the one we just did before this is reported to be recited by Muhammad during the Zuhr and Asr prayers. The benefits of this, remember it's a spell, include Allah making things easy for the reciter until he is satisfied and sparing him hardship. Now note, what's interesting here is the sparing of his hardship actually means temporal hardship, which will conflict with other things that are said, but we don't have to.
Hey, it doesn't have to be consistent, Mary.
No.
Now, just keeping score here, I think I'm going to want a mountain of good deeds as opposed to relief of hardship, but maybe I can have both. So
yeah, you can have both. Why have one? You can have good clothes, you can have you can have great food on your trip where you don't have to bring anything and you just have food. So we have everything, right? So an interesting narration about that section that is projected onto the remainder of the surah comes from Ali, who said that after a funeral, Muhammad said, "There is not a soul among you that is killed except that Allah knows its place in Jannah or hellfire, but has a seat in Jannah or hellfire." In response, Ali and his companion said, "Now I think that this funeral was probably this is probably a delay after Abu Talib's funeral, or else Muhammad was reminded of the death of Abu Talib by another later funeral. So this is Muhammad's contextualizing this is occurring later on after a good delay. But this is what he's saying that kind of universalizes this according to the exegetes, right? In response, Ali and his companions said, should we not rely on him? That is, rely in faith that he will forgive their sins, because Allah has already decided. So when you were born, right, Allah's already destined you for hellfire or for Jannah, period. So Ali is like, well, if that's the case, shouldn't we just rely on him and not do any good deeds? But Muhammad told them to do work because people are facilitated in the deeds they do, or because they are facilitated to do what Allah knows of them, be they good or bad deeds, and then continue to quote the surah which had previously been revealed. This is his support for saying, so as for him that gives and bewares Allah and believes true the best reward, then surely we shall ease him to the easing. So what he's saying is that if good deeds are easy for you, so easy for you that you do them a lot, this is the indication that Allah has chosen you for Jannah. And if evil is easy for you, then this is the indication that Allah has chosen you for hellfire. So if you're doing bad deeds, this means that Allah has already chosen you for hellfire. That is what Muhammad's saying here.
Well, I think if we're going to follow this logic, you got to give both a try, right? You got to give good deeds a try, and you got to give bad deeds a try, and see which one's easy.
Yeah, so that's pretty funny, but yeah. So,
then you can figure it out.
Wow, man, killing that person was really hard. I must be for Jannah. So this is how Muslims are to know that these verses have a general application, because the tradition gives the circumstances of revelation as being narrow and specific. So you know it's general because of this story from Ali that he gave later on. So
I do have a question for you on that. The description they're given seemed to say that when someone dies, Allah knows their destiny, which would not mean that he predetermined it. So where does the idea of predetermining their destiny from birth come in?
Well, it means, so there's not a soul among you that's killed except that Allah knows its place. That the other version of this, but has a place in Jannah or hellfire. Like you already have a place before you die. In the context of the entire story, it's clear that what he's saying is that this is predestined for you before the death comes through. Yeah, it is kind of confusing, but the other version of it makes it clear what's meant there. And yeah, you kind of have to argue the words a little bit. But
yeah, I also find it funny that they're kind of asking a gospel message here, right? Yeah. Should we place our trust in Allah? And Muhammad's like, no, don't do that. Do work.
Yep.
Very interesting. Very interesting for sure.
Yep. So the surah begins, and by the night when it covers, and by the day when it brightly displays, and that which created the male and female. So once again, Allah is a thing. He's that which, because Allah is just an object. So, and that which created, this is a really important surah for the number of extreme variants it has. And that which created is omitted entirely in a reading attributed to Ibn Masud and Muhammad, leaving only the male and the female. Ibn Tabari reports similarly and adds Abu Adarda to the list of reciters, but includes the and. So by the day and the night when it covers, and by the day when it brightly displays, by the night when it covers, and by the day when it brightly displays, and the male and the female. And a report from Al-Qama has Muhammad explicitly rejecting the recitation that includes that which created. So there is a hadith out there that says that Muhammad said that it should not be that which created. It is wrong, attributing it to people who want to insert words into the surah and refusing to follow them. So Al-Qama says, I will not say it this way. People are putting their own words into Allah's mouth, and Muhammad himself rejected this recitation. Al-Tabari also reports that the people of Kufa recited this way without that which created. Does not have that, so in the people of Kufa. But guess what? All the Kufan recitations that are canonized have been altered to no longer have this variant. So the work of Ibn Mujahid, who canonized the variants, included altering who canonized the recitation, included altering recitations that he canonized. So he canonized Hafs, but also meddled with it to make the rasam the same. So this is very important. The Hafs recitation that you have now is not the recitation that came out of the mouth of Hafs. Want everybody to understand that from this. The Kufan recitations, Haf and Warsher Kufan, none of the reciters said the two words, that which created. Did not have those words. These were added into the text when they were canonized. Okay? So this variant might seek to address the oddness of Muhammad's God referring to himself in the third person and swearing by himself as an it in association with day and night shortly before speaking of himself in the first person plural, which will come later on. So he's swearing by himself as an it in the third person here. Very odd, right? Not not by me, but by it. Okay? So now that's something, this entire thing is odd with the Quran from Allah theology. One interpretation put forward by Al-Tabari is to assert that the and that which created means the act of Allah rather than Muhammad's God properly. So the act of Allah was that which created the male and the female, his action, and he's swearing by his action rather than himself. Now, which I guess, but Muhammad often calls himself an it. He forgets that he's supposed to be masculine. We have to use his preferred pronouns, which are it. And that which, not the one who, a lot of times. The male and the female here are Adam and Eve, all humans, or created creatures generally, depending on who's exegeting this. More likely, the second is true. That's all humans, and it's a reference to the miracle of espoused pairs. That
which we know is very important.
Or actually,
all
I meant
plants
third, rather.
and animals.
Male and the female should be the third. I don't know why I wrote the second. Most likely it's the third, which is a reference to the miracle of espoused pairs expected on the last day, as well as to the authority of Muhammad's God over reproduction found in Surah 96. The male and the female are understood by Muqatil, though, to be Adam and Eve. Now, indeed, your efforts are surely scattered. This means scattered in type or diverse of both good and evil, according to Muqatil, and similarly Al-Razi, saying that some efforts are worthy of Jinnah and others of hellfire. The original skips straight to verse 14, and the logic follows. Because your deeds are both good and bad, I have been sent to warn you of the fire and its punishment, because at any moment the end of the world will come. Thus, purify and give charity to expunge the evil of your deeds in order to see the face of your Lord. Of course, seeing Muhammad's God, the action of seeing Muhammad's God will not survive as a theological point in later Muhammadan theology, but Abu Darda claims that some people do all the bad deeds and some do all the good, which would make a warning useless for one and superfluous for another. So if you're saying that your deeds are surely scattered, so I'm warning you, what's the point of the warning then? If some people are doing all the good deeds and some people are doing all the bad deeds. People who are doing all the bad deeds keep doing the bad deeds, and ones who are doing the good don't need a warning. So it makes no sense, but it fits more with the later theology that he invents, that Muhammad invents. Now, what's interesting is that there is a narration from Muhammad that adds the name Allah to verse 8. And again, the most frequently added word in early corrected Quranic texts is Allah. This is indicative of the fact that Allah was introduced as Muhammad's God later on and added to things that before said he, to really stress the fact that Allah is Al-Harb, even though Muhammad didn't initially teach this. So Al-Razi is has this narration that as for him who gives and bewares Allah, right? Gives is understood generally to be charity, which would be what the following verses would imply. But of course, exegesis transcends coherence, and Al-Tabari records a tradition in which one gives all the rights due to Allah and bewares the prohibitions of Allah, and another in which gives is transforms into remembers Allah instead, which doesn't even make sense. But again, it's this idea of secret knowledge, which for all of the Quran's declarations of its clarity, secret knowledge is central to actual real Islamic practice as it exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then believes true the best. You have to believe that the best is true. Though the word's root would only give the meaning of the best in context, just the best, nothing else. It is most commonly understood to mean the best reward, the reward of Jannah, and is usually translated this way as the best reward. But Al-Razi records several other contradictory interpretations as to what the best is. So you have to believe true that the best is true, but we're not really sure what you have to believe, right? Because if you don't believe true the best, you're going to hellfire. You need to believe true the best, but we're not really sure what this is. Additional impossibilities include the statement that there is no God but Allah, Allah's requirements of personal holiness and spending in charity, every good characteristic of Allah and good deeds, the reward in Jannah specifically for spending in charity, or the two excellent options in jihad of victory or martyrdom.
So this sentence is somewhat confusing in English, for sure. I guess it's probably confusing in anything because you got like two words without any descriptor. But what it's trying to say is you have to believe in some specific thing that that thing is true. Correct?
Yes, it believes that the best is true. So what is the best?
Right, but we don't know what the best is. I mean,
In
I think
context,
everyone would
you
agree
just
that whatever
assume
is
that it would
best
mean-
is true. But
Yeah, in context, you would assume that it would mean like the rewards promised in Jannah. That's what you would just believe reading it. But we're being corrected here that you need to, some people believe that you need to believe in the two excellent options in jihad of victory or martyrdom. And if you don't believe that the best death essentially is, or the best activity is jihad, which has two equally excellent ends, victory or death, then you don't go to Jannah. So anyway, some versions added that they gave him out of his money based on what Allah had commanded. So Al-Tabari adds the interpretation that means that he believed in Muhammad, in the successor from Allah, and some versions added that they gave to him out of his money based on what Allah had commanded. So you have to give and beware and believe true the best. So the object of your giving would be Muhammad himself, because you would believe him to be true and it's connected to the giving, according to one report.
so, well,
So
I think modern Muslims will agree with that.
What?
I think modern Muslims won't have any problem with that, with Muhammad being described as the best, the thing that you have to believe in. But that's clearly not what it actually means in context, regardless of what some exegete tried to claim.
Yep. Now, the sentence, then we shall surely ease him to the easing, has the future particle sa, which is interpreted to mean that the fate of each person is settled, or in contradiction, there is a delay between the pronouncement and outcome in which a person will have the opportunity to switch destinations. Even though it's settled, you'll still have a switching chance, basically, because your switch is settled, right? Your switch is settled.
Yeah.
I know that sounds confusing, but your switch.
Yeah. I get why the wording's kind of weird, right? Because it's to preserve a meter and a rhythm and a rhyme.
Oh no, there's no rhythm here, and the sa actually means nothing except that it's just a future tense. It's just given weird interpretations because they're going to give it weird interpretations.
Well, no, I just meant the wording in general, not specifically with that phrase. But so what it's saying is, you have to believe something is the best, and if you do, then Allah will make your path easy, basically.
Yeah, it will make your path easy to the destination of ease. Yes. The easing is interpreted most obviously as Jannah, but of course, some claim that it means good deeds. That is, good deeds will be made easy to the believer. Likewise, in verse 10, hardship is most obviously hellfire, but some interpret it as association. or shirk, right? The theology of good deeds being easy is prominent in late Mohammedanism, um, motivating this shaky interpretation, in which one of the main mercies of Allah is that Allah accounts for the desires and lusts, especially of men, giving them many ways in which to avoid blameworthiness and accrue merits while satisfying their basest desires for sex, wealth, and even forbidden deeds. So the fact that you will be eased to the easing means that there's so many opportunities for your good deeds that you'll just be like reciting things and getting the weight of the throne, right? So you're eased to the easing because you're doing this recitation, and now that cancels out all the other things. You can avoid having fornication by having slave girls, or by doing temporary marriage, or by getting your buddy to divorce his wife so you can bang her and then you divorce her and give her back. Like, there's so many options to not accrue any sins, or if you do accrue sins, to outweigh them enormously in the system. And so that's kind of what's seen there.
Proving the beautiful character of our beloved Prophet Muhammad.
Exactly. So then the next verse, as for him who withholds and has prosperity, and the word here really literally means prosperity, but in the Quran it comes to mean to be without any need as an extension idea of prosperity. So like your post-scarcity, you have no need, your post-scarcity. And then this is said positively of Allah, meaning that he's the fount of bounty and without any need of external material support, because he's a source of prosperity. Now here, the older meaning, it's clearly meant. The literal meaning is clearly meant, but because of the force of the religious sense that gets introduced later, the plain meaning is eclipsed by the tafsir, which have the weird interpretations, and then the verse then makes way less sense. It's logical to condemn a man who withholds wealth while he is prosperous, but it makes no sense to pair withholding charity and being self-sufficient. In fact, this verse does not say that he merely considers himself self-sufficient, which is usually read into the text, but that he actually is prosperous and self-sufficient. So this whole Islamic secret reading thing messes stuff up. So, and then those who withhold and have prosperity, so you have something to give but you're withholding it anyway, and cries lies to the best, so that's the opposite of believing the best to be true, then we shall ease him to the hardship. And again, the plain reading of easing to the easing would mean something like cause him to go toward Jannah without his perceptible realization because of his deeds. So a plain reasoning of ease him to the hardship would be similar. This would be a statement of just outcomes despite not seeing the outworking of divine favor in the present time. And that's congruent with Quran 87:8 as well, which we had before about the hardship and the ease and things like that. But Muhammad's later exegesis demands that his deity be the one who is actively facilitating evil and has in fact decreed every evil deed that every unbeliever ever does. And so the idea of Allah easing him to the hardship, that would mean that Allah is facilitating sins for people through his activity, through his active participation. He is making the sins easier for them. He is participating in sinning. Every sin that is committed, Allah is a participant in it. Then it continues, and his wealth shall not prosper him when he perishes. This verb could alternatively mean that he falls down literally. Perishes could be falls down, according to the exegetes, because of the root and the usage in a different verse of the Quran, where another word from the same root means falling down. There's a Hebrew word that similarly can mean to fall down literally, but also to fall as in to die or be ruined. And the idea similarly even exists to a less extensive degree in English, such as in Rome fell, or he fell to the onslaught of attacks, or even Adam and Eve fell. So this uncertainty in the Arabic here is fairly common in languages. Now, the idea that worldly wealth is of no use in the resurrection is expressed in so many Christian sources that it doesn't really need citation. This is kind of idea that Muhammad picked up from the environment. But if this word is to be understood to mean fall specifically, then the Ethiopian Enoch 106 becomes startlingly relevant. So we don't know for sure whether or not fall was chosen deliberately or just because it's a common word that also means death. But if it was, then Enoch becomes very relevant, and the Quran interfaces with the Enoch kind of a surprising amount of time, which is understandable given that his nurse was an Ethiopian woman, right? And he knew Ethiopian because she essentially was the closest thing he had to his mother, even though he certainly banged her, which is disgusting. But anyway.
Yeah, just to clarify for the audience there, I know what Mary's referring to, but the audience may not.
Yes.
In the Ethiopian church, the Book of Enoch, which according to scholarly consensus is a 2nd century BC book originally written in Greek, is in fact written by Enoch as the first piece of writing in the history of the world and is considered scripture. Thus, if he is talking to Christians from Ethiopia, they would have a high regard for the Book of Enoch.
Yeah, and there is kind of this no man's land of canon in the extended canon of Ethiopia. They include secular writings in their extended canon as authoritative sources of historical knowledge, but not as divine things. So you do have to be careful about the extended canon. This is part of the extended canon rather than the closed canon, but certainly the average Ethiopian at that time would think that this is genuinely from Enoch, in spite of whatever fine differences were made by the Ethiopian church about the authority of various things.
So relevant on topic comments, I'll take it immediately here from Andrew Martin. These verses are attacking the ruler of Muhammad's tribe. Muhammad wants money and the ruler refuses, so Muhammad is cursing him in his secret diary.
Yeah. There is another area where it's quite clear that Muhammad is asking for money, and people will be condemned more for not giving him money. This one is not. This one only doesn't naturally lead to this understanding. As for him who gives and bewares and believes true the best, because there are places where orphans and the poor and other thing are mentioned, that would not be the natural reading here. But I'm not sure whether or not we'll get to it this time. There are, or if, I don't think I've already gotten to it, but there are areas where it is clear that Muhammad hit up the Quraysh and told them that they need to give him money because he should be considered their religious leader. But I don't think that's the most natural reading of this one, though it is possible. I don't think it's the most natural reading.
All right. Thank you for that response.
Whoops. So the excerpt from Ethiopian Enoch is this: and the wise man will see the truth, and the sons of the earth will understand the saying of this book, and they will know that their wealth cannot save them from the fall of their sin. Not only that, but there's an additional detail at the end that these sinners, that you shall be burned with burning fire, in the same section, with the same kind of repetition that we see in verse 14. So if this really is chosen as fall for the meaning of fall, then that would be very suggestive. I'm not sure I'm ready to go there, but could be very suggestive. Continuing on, verse 12, indeed, upon us is surely the guidance. This verse is insane, guys. Listen carefully here. Upon us is the guidance. Now, this is the first time that Allah is us. But this word upon, it is used in the Quran exclusively for things that are obligatory. Upon us is a guidance. So this would mean that guidance is obligatory for Muhammad's God. Now, the standard Sunni interpretation is that this is fulfilled by simply explaining the correct deeds that need to be done to achieve Jannah, while the Mu'tazila insisted that for guidance to be obligatory would require more than good deeds are made known, but that Allah cannot be implicated in leading people astray, because Allah cannot claim to have guidance as an obligation while actually doing the exact opposite. Mu'tazila, again, are speaking like common sense, which is not allowed in Islam. Thus, the elucidation of what the good deeds are must be accompanied by people possessing the actual power to follow them, or else Allah's guidance is effectually worthless. Absurdly, another interpretation. So if you're saying that Allah tells them that you need to do good deeds, but then makes them do bad deeds, that he has not fulfilled the obligation of guidance that he's put upon himself. That's nonsense. Absurdly, another interpretation tries to just totally remove upon from the us to being a vague expression that obligation just exists. So there's an obligation, but it's actually about what humans are responsible for, because Allah can't possibly be under obligation, even though that's clearly what the text says. I have not figured how they could possibly mangle the grammar to get this meaning. It's not possible. A third reading admits that this means guidance is indeed obligatory upon Allah, but then says that misguidance is also guidance, so Allah is only obligated to lead people to either Jannah or the hellfire interchangeably. And again, if Allah's guidance can also be misguidance, you Muslims are in so much trouble, because you never know when Allah talks about his guidance, where it's guiding you to.
Well, regardless of how you interpret this verse, I mean, that would really be true regardless, because if Allah is guiding you on a path, it doesn't really matter if he's misguiding you on the bad path or guiding you on the good path. Either way, you couldn't tell the difference, right? Because
he's so
compelling, right? It's so compelling that you follow it, regardless of which type it is. So whether you use one word or two, I don't think really changes the theology any.
And Becky Stokes is like, wait, guidance is upon Allah from who or what? Yeah, ask Allah, because Allah is the one who revealed this. Indeed, upon us is surely the guidance. He has an obligation. Maybe he's put it on himself. Maybe it just exists. Mm-hmm. And then it says, and indeed, for us is the last and the first. The same word is end for last as elsewhere, but with the contrast to first, it requires a translation of last to make any sense. Now note that God calls himself the first and last in Isaiah 41:6, 44:6, 48:12, Revelation 22:13. And then in Revelation 22:13, Jesus applies the same titles to himself. The first and the last will later be more informed by Christian or especially Jewish usage of this world, which will use dunya, a word meaning near, and the word world to come, which will continue to be the word for last end. It just hasn't been introduced yet. Then he continues, so I warned you of a fire flaming, and the grammar of this is fairly shocking, as without Islamic lenses, it would appear to be Muhammad speaking directly in the first person here. In this early surah, the second person is not reserved strictly for those who follow Muhammad, but also includes those who reject him. This is typical of the structure of the early surahs, where disbelievers are often addressed in second person, because with the Islamic lenses, you have
so are they going to claim that the question is who is I, right? So they're going to claim that this is Allah?
Right. So with Islamic lenses, the I is Allah. But if you're just reading along and you have not already decided that all eyes will be Allah, if that has not yet been established, which I don't think it has at this point, this would be Muhammad warning everyone of a fire flaming, because he's been told to warn people. So now he's warning people.
Right. Well, the previous lines were how guidance comes from Allah, and then you got this is
the stuff that's shoved in. So that jumps in. And indeed, your efforts are surely scattered. So I warned you of a fire flaming. So you have to jump down to here, because all this middle part was thrown in as another.
Well, then the so has no reference, though.
Well, no, listen to this. By the night when it covers, and by the day when it brightly displays, and that which was that which created male and female. Indeed, your efforts are surely scattered. So I warned you of a fire flaming. This is all Muhammad speaking.
Okay, yeah, that
And
could work.
he's actually swearing by Allah here in the original. Because who's giving the warning? Like, who's literally giving the warning? It's Muhammad.
Right. So that works, but I think it also works with the what you are interpreting as interpolation here.
Yeah, that's why I was interpolating there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then it
So-
changes from plural to singular.
Right. But what I'm saying is, even if we read it as it is, I think it still works because Allah says that, we have the guidance. And then Muhammad says, because of this, I'm warning you. Right?
Yeah, that could also be true. But with Islamic lenses, you have to read the I as Allah speaking. But I don't think it was. I think it was
yeah, I don't think that works.
No, I think it's
so
really
Allah says, we have the guidance. So I warned you. What? Like if
well, I
it's
mean, Allah does this frequently, but
well,
yeah, I think it's Muhammad.
I mean, Allah's a little stupid, but even so, I think that's like really awkward and improbable that's what it would mean.
Now, here's a good part. None will burn in it except the most wretched, the one who cries lies and turns away. One interpretation that you must both cry lies and turn away to go to hellfire. Anyone who does merely one or the other, or any other sin, is safe, even if that means the most wretched in the superlative, or even that it means the most wretched person in the superlative and means only one person ever. So
That's
none will
hilarious.
burn in it except for the most wretched people who cry lies and turn away, or none will burn in it except for the singular most wretched person ever, the one who cried lies and turned away, and everybody else will be safe. Now, Al-Razi...
sorry, just reading this naturally.
Yeah.
Mary, right? I'm not an expert
Oh,
on
I mean,
Arabic
makes sense.
or anything.
Come on, you're bringing
Right.
sense into this. Yeah.
None will burn it in hell except for the most wretched. Complete thought. Clarification, the one who is most wretched is the one who cries and turns away.
Right. And the crying lies and turning away can be any of the acts of essentially disbelief. Because turning away has a fairly general meaning, right? But
yeah, forget what the exegetes say, right? That seems to be the straightforward interpretation, is that turning away is what makes you wretched.
Yeah, that this makes you wretched. But this one says that only one person is the most wretched person who cries lies and turns away, because everybody else has some sort of something that makes them not fully crying lies and not fully turning away.
And good news, everyone in chat. At most, one of you is going to hell.
Yep. No one else is going there. So, ready for this? Al-Razi also presents an interpretation. He presents one interpretation that flaming fire is just a specific level of hellfire reserved for such a person or that one person, which then he later denies is a goofy interpretation, as all of hellfire is given in this description in 70:15. So some people wanted to go, oh, well, yes, it's true that only one shall go here, but it's a special level. And he's like, no, that doesn't hang together. He also presents an interpretation that if someone cries lies, they will also be turning away from Muhammad's claims. Al-Razi also denies that these verses mean that rejecting Muhammad is the only sin that can send one to hellfire, though that kind of is the plain meaning here, that like all of you who don't believe me, you're the only ones going to hellfire. But whatever. And the wary be removed from it. Now, this is where things get really interesting.
Uh-oh.
This specific form of the word can also mean, I said to remove, I changed the ones, but be far away from it or removed from it. So it may be saying that the faithful will be removed from the fire after having been placed in it initially, or that they were removed from. So our own language has the idea of someone is far removed from something, meaning that they are distant from it, but they're also removed from something in which they have been in for a time, right? We have the same dual thing, but we usually use that word far to distinguish between, far removed from any accusation of such and such. We usually add that word far, but if you didn't, he is removed from any accusation of such. Sounds a little bit odd to us, but actually historically kind of had that same dual meaning. And because of this dual meaning, there is a question in the exegetes whether or not whether or not the wary, those who are
Mhm.
religiously wary, who are God-fearing, who fear Allah, will be placed in the fire and then pulled out, or they will be put far away from the fire, because both readings are in this verse. So,
Yeah, I would agree with that, that 17 is ambiguous. Andrew Martin says in Court of Quranic Theology, I think he means the idea of them going there, which Surah 19 is unambiguous. I think there's no way you
yeah,
can faithfully read Surah 19 other than that everyone goes to hell, and then Allah removes some people from it.
yeah, and that is kind of the again Zoroastrian influence here. So Al-Razi opposes those who interpret it to mean that wariness is required of those who are kept from hellfire, meaning that the insane and children would enter hellfire, because he claims that this entire section does not address the fates of those who are neither the most wary nor the most wretched. So Al-Razi wants to mean that they were far away, and that doesn't want the children and the insane to be the only ones who are protected from or removed from fire, because then children who don't have a knowledge of Allah and insane people would be condemned. So he doesn't like that. So the next verse is the one who gives his wealth to purify himself. That is part of the description of the wary people. And note that this word, this purification word, is the root from which zakat, or obligatory Islamic alms, comes. So whenever you give Islamic alms, the reason why, sakara is actually the word that means charity. This zakat actually literally means a purification. In this context, the verb means only purification, but the context of the purification through giving in the surah heavily motivated the development of the word zakat and its meaning. That is, it's money that keeps you out of hellfire. It's obligatory money that keeps you out of hellfire. That's what zakat is. And not conferring any grace upon any man to be recompensed. So the understanding is that if you give in order to get a reward in this world, you won't get a reward in the world to come, according to Al-Razi, which is the plain reading of the text. This would violate.
What about all those preachers that we have on here all the time who are telling you to give your reward? Or, I mean, give your money so you can get your reward.
To be recompensed by that man. You're only giving it to be recompensed by Allah.
Oh, so the man part is crucial here, right?
Right.
So if you're buying a human being's favor, Allah doesn't like that.
Yes.
But if you're buying Allah's favor, that's all good.
Now, note that the idea that you would avoid giving to get back, it would violate the systems of favor as obligations that are dominant in honor shame societies. But this idea would have like no impact on later Islamic theology. Muhammad went out and literally bought people to convert to Islam. So he got a favor. They joined his army, and that's considered great. So this is something that they don't really put any authority in. Except, and so here's the important part, on any man to be recompensed except seeking the face of his Lord Most High. So the recompense that you should want would be, here it is community with Al-Rab. Now, as an Ash'ari, Al-Razi denies that the face of Allah means that Allah has a face, and calls those who affirm it anthropomorphists, and also denies that it means that people seek Allah himself in any kind of experience of his being or essence, and instead asserts it means that they are seeking his reward and honor. Why the reward and honor of Allah would be called his face is not easily understood, especially since Allah's face is what the reward would consist of here. It is a tautology. Do not seek any recompense except blank. If whatever is in that blank is recompense, by definition, it is a tautology. It has to be a recompense. You have to have a recompense. And if you turn it into do not seek any recompense except recompense, that doesn't make any sense, right?
Right.
So why would this recompense be described as Allah's face? Why not his shin or his eyes or his feet? Of course, seeking the face of God existed in Christian language to mean God's presence and a personal experience of him, which is almost certainly what the Quran originally meant here, because Muhammad was stealing words from Jews, Christians that he heard around, right? If it had any meaning at all, but this had to be revised out of the religion in the development toward Islamic orthodoxy. Finally, and surely he shall be satisfied. That is, the reward that he will get is final satisfaction. And if you recite this, you're going to be satisfied. So just recite it and get satisfaction. You get magical thinking here. Now, the visitation of the Abyssinian delegation, I believe, is a source of Allah's plural usage. Now, some of the Mohammedans fled to Abyssinia fairly early on. Meccan leaders sent a delegation to Abyssinia saying, send back our teenagers and our young people. They're crazy and they belong to us and they're just acting out. We're not going to hurt them, but they're part of our community and they need to come back. In response, the king of Aksum sent a delegation to Muhammad. This is very poorly attested in the sources. Like, there are a number of references to it, but it's scattered about. And I believe because what they said is so non-committal. Muhammad would use this as an affirmation of the truth of the accuracy of his truth claims. But remember, the people of Ethiopia, they're Christians. What do they want to get out of Arabia? They want to get back power and control of Yemen, which historically extended into the Hijaz. They want to rebuild the kingdom that extended as far north as Medina before. So whenever people come and go, oh, we believe in your God and we want to be your friends, they're hoping that this will be a way for them to get back into Arabia, which they believe is rightfully theirs. This is also a point because Aksum was originally settled a long time ago by people from Yemen, and so they kept that identity and feel like the Sassanians and these other things that they're illegitimate. They are the legitimate people of Yemen, even though they are, of course, heavily mixed with Africans now. Their cultural identity still points back to Arabia. And so they go, let's send someone over there and talk to this guy. And they're being very diplomatic when they send people over. And I believe that the delegation wanted to find out what the heck this dude believed, because he didn't seem like a Christian, so they wanted to find out. So they quizzed Muhammad enough to know that he was a nutcase heretic, but the instructions of the delegation were to neither officially affirm nor officially reject him. They did not have that power. They weren't there to humiliate him, call him out, or to build him up, either one, just to gather information. Mm-hmm. I believe that one of the questions that they asked was about the plural of Genesis 1:26, because the Abyssinians, who were in close contact with the Jews, they're called Beta Israel, they're still in Ethiopia, they would be using that polemic regularly as part of their conversation against the Jews who denied any plurality in the Godhead. So whenever they found somebody else who's like, oh, my God is entirely singular, they gently asked the question, oh, why does it say we here? And then Muhammad was just like, oh, Al-Harb sometimes talks like that. And then after that interaction, he began inserting we's randomly into the Quran, much, much, much more commonly than was obviously in the Bible. The big point is that there's no Arabic usage to justify a plural that is not referring to a we. There's no such thing as a plural of majesty in Arabic. It does not exist. There's no such thing as a plural of majesty referring to pronouns in Hebrew. There's no such thing as a plural of majesty in Greek or Ethiopic or any other language. He invented it on the spot as they brought him through a number of theologically complicated verses to see what he would say. Because they did not call him out, he declares that, oh, look, do you see? They will, they do not say that I have said anything wrong. And I believe after this point is where he starts saying that, ask the Jews, ask the Christians, ask the believers, they'll affirm. They go from not calling him out to clear affirmation, right? So Muhammad developed the legend of this visit in his own mind. And one of the reasons why it's so poorly attested is that it didn't quite go the way that Muhammad twisted it to be. So the delegation's decision to continue sheltering the Mohammedans for political reasons and their failure to publicly reject him actually enabled Islam to take root, or proto-Islam at this point doesn't have a lot of the major Islamic beliefs, but to allow Muhammad's faith to take root, and it made Muhammad think that he was teaching what the Christians believed. And I think that really can be the only source for this. All right.
So just to summarize here, right? You said that the Abyssinians, they sent this political delegation. They were just on a fact-checking mission. They weren't trying to affirm Muhammad or reject him.
Yeah,
that's totally fine and legitimate and the best scenario ever to be done.
See, it was the best scenario ever to be done. That they weren't going to reject him, no matter what he said.
Right, because they didn't want to stir the pot. And if he had said certain things where they thought they wouldn't possibly be able to ally with him in the future, because remember, right now he thinks that Christians are his allies, right? Because they want to have an ally there to help throw out the Sicilians. And if he had said things such that they did not believe that they could be allies whatsoever in the future with what he was teaching then, that it was totally out of the question, then they would have sent back the people. But they were like, no, let's keep this political pawn in our pocket, see what we can do with it. He at least thinks that he's one of us. Maybe we can send somebody over there to educate him better later on. But we now have a potential political tool. Let's go ahead and shelter his people.
Couple points here. Jack Ray says that the majestic plural is royal representing a nation or a people. Therefore, it is actually plural, and that is correct. I don't know why people...
But that does not exist at this...
It doesn't seem to exist. Just to be clear, I don't think it exists in any language at this time. But regardless, I don't know why anyone ever thinks this is an explanation for anything, because it doesn't help your case, right? If you're trying to say that
Allah is speaking for his creation, right?
Yeah. Be singular, well, no, it's not. It's not singular when it's royal either. Andrew, however, has a different idea. I think that we or us or our is Jibril, who is the legion in the Bible. Interesting suggestion.
Yeah, I think that may be kind of an influence too over time. I think that might be part of why Muhammad so readily embraced this. Might be all the weird visitations he was getting and the weird things in his head. So yes, there absolutely is royal we, for example, in English in the early modern period, possibly the Middle Ages. I'm not even sure, but with declarations that we, speaking for the nation, do this. Like it is a we of speaking for the whole nation. But this did not exist in Arabic culture. It didn't exist at this time.
I agree with that statement. I researched this in some depth some time ago. I couldn't find any real evidence that it existed anywhere at this time period. But even if it did,
find it from the Middle Ages forward. People said, "Oh, it was so and so did it," and I looked for so and so doing it, and I couldn't find it. Like, it was supposed to be in various, but like people will cite things, and I will look at the document, and I'm like, "No, there's no we here, guys. Why are you saying this?"
I had a similar experience. Like I looked up some supposed, like these weren't like necessarily Muslims making a claim, just supposed early existence of royal we or whatever, and it'd be like a military leader speaking, saying the troops are doing something. Like it was just an ordinary we.
That's not royal we. It's literally about us. Yeah, it's a literal we. It's not royal we. Yeah, and that's what I found too. All right, I will be right back. I gotta kick Doggy out.
All right, no problem. I got some stuff here. Jack Gray says Muhammad preferred pronoun ambiguity. He was a by Allah curious fellow. Highly possible. Houston said, so this is another reason they must claim the Torah is corrupted, because this word salad is not in the Torah. So, the words of the Quran are not found in the Torah. Absolutely. They have to say it's corrupted. The irony here, though, and the reason I saved this comment, is because they have to argue that human beings have made more coherent language, that they took the original hard to understand, sometimes literally incoherent language of Allah and improved upon it in order to claim that it was corrupted. Very strange stuff for sure. Protestant believer triggered. Who ate the apple? Church in Morocco. Ask Muslims why Bilal wasn't considered a Muhammad companion, even though he accompanied Muhammad before a lot of the other companions. Good question, right? They're always like, Bilal proves that Muhammad wasn't a racist because he was black. But why isn't he a companion? Good question for sure. Andrew Martin said Muhammad's uncorrected speech or unmodified speech is in accord with his polytheism. What do you think of that, Mary? Does Muhammad's original language show elements of polytheism?
Yes. Well, it really does. All of his swearing by this and swearing by that and everything else. So
he was still a little bit polytheistic. Noted.
Well, Andrew Martin says that we will kill their sons and keep their women alive. Indeed, we are subjugators over them. Yeah, but it also uses a plural of action, and it's our people, it's our faction. So
right. So I mean, that's like
also
literal.
the Quran, but it could be just be a literal we, like me and my followers are going to do that, right?
So for it to be like the royal we, it has to be the ruler speaking for themselves, but attributing it to the nation, right? Not just a group. Like, I mean, anyone could say that. Like, you could be on a sports team and say, we will defeat our opponents. I mean, that's not an unusual use of the we. That's just ordinary we. So it has to like look like it's singular and then not actually be. Now, according to Houston, Wikipedia says Roe goes back to ancient China. I haven't seen that particular claim. I would have to evaluate
and
the
it,
sources.
and it wouldn't matter anyway, because it has to be relevant to the area, right? It has to be relevant to the area. So but
yeah,
I
have
it
also
dates
looked at
back
in the
to the time of
context.
the Magna Carta. That's 27. Oh my goodness, my brain's going. Magna Carta date. Oh my goodness, my brain is gone. 1215. Why did I think 27? See, I knew that wasn't right. 1215. That would be King John, the brother of Richard, who he says coined the term royal we to be him speaking for his nobles, and that sounds about right with the Magna Carta, because the Magna Carta was pretty much written by the nobles and was made to be signed by the king. So he put his hands on the wrong girl finally, and they were like, nope, we had enough, we're done.
Fair enough. I did also look at the supposed Arabic examples predating Muhammad, attempt to prove that this was a thing in Arabic, and I could not find anything. Now, that's not to say that anything doesn't exist. I'm not making an absolute claim, but I want to see some evidence, right? And even if I did see that evidence, it still wouldn't really explain Allah, because he's not speaking on behalf of the nation like a king would.
Right. He's speaking in his own authority. Why would Allah need to be more excellent by speaking on behalf of the angels or whatever, right?
Yep.
So anyway, continuing on, the next surah that we're going to look at is called the forenoon, basically meaning that the morning, but like the late morning, anything before noon.
Yep. So just so you know, Mary, just because of your guidance, right? Will you be able to cover this in like 20 or 30 minutes?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I've gone through.
All right.
I've gone through a ton of these already. they
I
get
know, but
shorter and shorter as you go.
92, right? 92. Well, no, that's definitely not true because some of the earlier ones only took 10 minutes, and then 92 took like close to an hour. So,
I think that this one is, this one's only 11, so it's really short.
all
So
right. So we'll cover 93, and then we'll wrap up.
most likely that is all the time we'll have. We might be able to do one more after that, but that might be it. All right. So according to one narration in the history of Al-Tabari, the order is the clot, the pen, the wrapped up one, then the forenoon. The circumstances of revelation for this one are as follows. Once the prophet fell ill and did not offer the night prayer for a night or two. A woman came to him and said, "O Muhammad, I do not see, but your Satan has left you." Then Allah revealed, "By the forenoon and by the night when it darkens," or still, "Your Lord has not forsaken you nor hated you." So I love this because here Allah is not denying that he is a Satan. He's like, "Nah, me, you're Satan. I haven't left you." So I love that narration. It's awesome. The narration is another place where Muhammad is explicitly accused of being jinn possessed, a frequent theme in the earliest surat. The response of Muhammad's deity, again, rather than denying that he is a shaitan, he merely refutes that he has left Muhammad, implicitly affirming the first part of the accusation, which is fabulous. Notice the important detail that Muhammad had left off night prayers specifically. This was the earliest practice of the Mohammedan sect, which made it distinct, and this specific night praying is what Muhammad had to leave for a few days. So again, the only religious practice is standing in night prayer that we get from these early sources, and it's super consistent. So Al-Qurtubi reported that Muhammad had a finger that was painfully cut by a rock. The version reported by Ibn Kathir and Indur al-Dur al-Manthur tries to blame it on a stone that was thrown at him, though this is not possible. Muhammad used to state clearly that the Quraysh never did anything unpleasant to me until Abu Talib died. That's in Abu al-Tabari's history. The narration is also a transparent fabrication because it already calls Muhammad's deity by the name of Allah and contains jihad theology. The third attaches the lack of revelation not to an illness or injury, but to a dead puppy under Muhammad's bed, discovered by the sweeping of his slave Kaula, which was motivated by Muhammad fearing that some malign influence had entered and prevented revelation from reaching him. Block thus removed, he began shaking and trembling immediately. Al-Dur al-Manthur even reports that he would tremble whenever a puppy came to him and asked to have his cloak thrown over him for his mystical revelatory practice. Now, this might be a Medinan event, however, and it may be connected to Muhammad declaring that dogs prevent angels from entering a house, which is sometimes also connected to the story of a living puppy belonging to his grandson Al-Hassan, or one that crept into Aisha's house, causing him problems. Yet another tradition says that when Meccans asked him why he wasn't giving revelation, that he said, "How can it be revealed to me when you do not clean your upper parts?" And another narration, "Your foreheads, nor cut your nails, nor trim your mustaches."
What is that logic?
I can't get revelation because you're not cleaning your faces, you're not washing your face or cutting your nails or trimming your mustaches. Then the surah was revealed. That's a particularly silly narration because these were the fitra of the pagans that they already practiced. This is explicit in a bunch of other places that they wash their faces and trim their nails and trim their mustaches. So this is just a silly narration. However, Muhammad periodically lost revelation through much of his career, so assigning one particular event to this surah is difficult. If any are authentic, the woman saying that Shaitan had left him is the most specific and likely most accurate narration. This may have also been one of the occasions upon which Muhammad sought to commit suicide when the revelation ceased for a time. If you remember, Ibn Kathir believes that Ibn Ashaq thinks that it is. A related hadith says, but after a few days, Waraqah died and the divine inspiration was also paused for a while, and the prophet became so sad, as we have heard, that he intended several times to throw himself from the tops of high mountains, and every time he went up to the top of a mountain to throw himself down, Jibreel would appear before him and say, "Oh, Muhammad, you are indeed Allah's messenger in truth," whereupon his heart would become quiet and he would calm down and he would return home. And whenever the period of coming of the inspiration used to become long, he would do as before. And when he used to reach the top of a mountain, Jibreel would appear before him and say to him what he did before. I'll top, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, people are having a lot of fun with this. Now, we're not
Yeah.
suggesting that the dead puppy is remotely realistic, but people are definitely having a lot of fun with that one. Now, here, this is very interesting, right? Muhammad's like, I can manipulate Jibril into giving me revelations by saying I'm going to kill
Yes,
myself.
exactly.
And then it works.
He's like an abusive boyfriend. It's like, oh, I'm gonna kill myself if you don't come over to see me. You can't break up with me, or I'm gonna kill myself. And Jabril
Oh my
runs over
God.
like an abused girlfriend, right?
Oh, I'm not laughing at the idea of abused girlfriend. I'm laughing at cheeky, shaky here. They just assume the smell is coming from Muhammad
Yeah,
of the dead dog under his bed. Oh
yeah, the month
man.
is pretty long. That's a bit insane. So,
Yeah, that clearly, right. Clearly these are other stories made up because the real story was fairly embarrassing that
yep.
this
And
woman was
yeah.
accusing Satan of leaving Muhammad, and then he's like, no, he hasn't.
Yep. Al-Tabari says pretty much the same thing. And Muhammad at Mecca, W.M. Watt quotes Al-Zuri as reporting, here was a gap for a time in the revelation to the messenger of God, and he was very sorrowful. He started going early to the tops of mountains to throw himself down from him. But whenever he reached the summit of this mountain, Jibril would appear to him and say, thou art the prophet of God. So here is the text, and by the brightness of, and that's considered by the brightness, it's considered of the morning hours. It's a related root. So that's how it's kind of understood together. And by the night when it quiets, thy Lord has not forsaken thee, nor hates. And this is the third person. There's also this lack of pronouns. It doesn't say nor hates thee. It really does say has not forsaken thee, nor hates, because that helps the rhyme. Because Allah needs to make the form goofy because rhyming is important to Allah. And he created Arabic in such a way that he can't express this more elegantly.
Yeah, so I mean, right, I don't know the grammar of Arabic, but like in English you could do this like the Lord has not thee forsaken nor hates. That would be
yeah, but it doesn't do that. The thee is stuck on to the forsaken. Like grammatically, you have to stick it together. Right,
like I said, I don't know Arabic.
So it doesn't work in Arabic.
Yeah, whether that would even be possible in Arabic. I was just saying. I mean,
yeah, it's not because you have to stick it to the previous. It's a
probably it's like just a participle, right? It's just a couple letters to the.
It's not a standalone pronoun, correct? It's just stuck to the end.
Yeah. Then it does have to be stuck onto something for sure, right?
So. And surely the last shall be better for thee than the first, and surely thy Lord shall give thee, and thou shalt be satisfied. Did he not find thee an orphan and give thee shelter? And he found thee astray, very important, so he guided, and he found thee needy, so he prospered. So as for the orphan, do not subjugate, and as for the questioner, do not repel. As for the grace of your Lord, then narrate. So,
wait, sorry, before you give further explanation here, why does that orphan come in here?
Muhammad was an orphan. Yeah, he found thee.
Yeah, okay. So don't subjugate Muhammad, right? Is what it's saying.
Well, no. Here it's talking about down there. It's talking about, and this is part of his charity. So the early stories are be good to the puppies, be good to the orphans, because you used to be an orphan, and then don't repel the questioner. So that's why it comes back in. That's why.
Well, the other ones you might do, but I mean, who would subjugate an orphan? I mean, that's just like beyond cruel.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the idea that like you want to be good to the poor people. And so they mean like, don't steal the orphan's inheritance. Remember that Muhammad thought his own inheritance was stolen from him because his dad's property was divided up and given away, 4 years before he was born because his mom wasn't pregnant then. And he isn't actually the child of the son he claims to be, or the child of the man he claims to be. So like he sees himself as having been victimized as a child. Now, the orphans in general at this time did not inherit a lot of the prestigious positions that might get them a lot of money from their fathers. Those would jump over to their uncles if they were young. There was no such thing as like having a regent for an important position. So it would just leave your family line if you were a kid when your dad died, and it should have gone to him. And I believe that Abdullah may have been the oldest living son at that time. So Muhammad, if Abdullah had actually been his father, which he wasn't, and Abdullah had survived, then Muhammad theoretically, although he'd be a different human being, would have become the heir possibly at that time. So he really kind of saw himself as having everything stolen from him. So yeah, Muhammad does really care about orphans mainly because he was an orphan, and that's the way.
Yeah. So whether it's a veiled reference to himself or just like him thinking about his own history, that does make sense. Now I understand why orphan comes in here.
Yeah.
Even though it'd be a pretty, I mean, it's not like a wrong idea or something. It's just like random.
But why
are you talking about orphans
specifically here of all things? Because he's just reminded of it because it was just mentioned, basically.
Yep.
So
I gotcha.
And also
that was a good explanation.
Yep. And keep in mind this lost, this astray. What does it mean? He found the astray, so he guided. This only ever has a religious meaning in the Quran, as we will go on to talk about. So the word refers to brightness, especially the sun, and the same root has a noun that refers to the morning time. So this is usually understood to refer to the brightness of the morning hours. But Al-Tabari cites opinions that claim it means at any time the sun is shining, that is all day. This is to make the parallel night more intuitive, because if to contrasting day and night is intuitive, contrasting morning and night is kind of odd, but that's probably what it actually is. There's some debate as to why Muhammad's deity would be swearing by the morning hours, particularly because there's no required prayer nor special supererogatory prayer designated for this period. So there's no special prayer at all for this period of time. One supposition is that he is instead swearing by the Lord of the morning hours, that is by himself. The word sajah, to cover up, it's the only time it's used. The meaning means to become calm, still, and quiet, so it's often interpreted as darkens because the night gets darker, it usually gets more still at the same time. Another possible meaning is that it covers, meaning covers up the day, an idea that's also expressed in Ayat 2:1, but with an unrelated word. It continues, "Thy Lord has not forsaken thee, nor hates." Al-Qurtubi argues that the thee there, that thee after hates is implied. Again, it was left a better rhyme. So he has to mention it because it's awkward. It actually is. Note that the third person form again does not match the later doctrine of Quran from Allah, as there is an anonymous third party who must be speaking here if this is coming directly from Allah, because he's talking in third person about Allah, but there's no say, right?
Right. So just quick point here. I'm actually willing to grant him that, poetry doesn't necessarily have to be perfectly grammatical. But notice that he's pointing this out because it's not grammatical, so he has to explain it to the audience. But Muslims tell us that the Quran is such a miracle because the language is so perfect that no one could ever duplicate it, which means that, for example, it's ungrammatical in places.
Good poetry does follow grammatical usage specific to poetry, which allows word inversions and other things. Things like subject-object mismatching, that would still be a massive problem in poetry. So
correct.
English poetry
it has rules, right?
But
has
here
rules.
It's not following correct rules at all.
But the point is, if this is like some kind of natural usage, Kirby wouldn't say anything about it. Right?
Yep.
He'd expect the audience to just know it, but he has to talk about it because it's not natural usage. But this is the most perfect text that if you rearrange one letter, it'll destroy everything, and yet you can easily improve upon it by following rules of grammar, for example.
So here it says, surely the last would be better for thee than the first. We've discussed that before, so I'm skipping it. And soon thy Lord shall give thee, so thou shalt be satisfied. So the question is, give thee what? Like, you don't normally say, I shall give you. Like, what?
It's got to have an object. Give.
Right.
In English, all right, I can't speak for Arabic, but in English, give without an object, that's a grammatical error. Right? You can't just say, I will give.
Yeah, usually it's a transitive verb, and it's the same in Arabic. You're giving somebody something. So give thee what appears to be as natural a question in Arabic as English, because the tafsir give us a number of options: success in this world and the reward of the end, the pool of abundance and intercession, 1,000 palaces of white pearls whose floor is musk, and as many wives and servants as are appropriate for it, that none of Muhammad's family members will enter the fire, or with his ummah entirely being granted mercy. So any of those things might be what's given. Al-Tabari adds the options of 1,000 palaces of pearls whose earth is musk. Everyone pay attention. The palaces that you get in Jannah are going to have dirt floors, but the dirt floors will be really, really nice dirt floors that will instead be musk. So
They'll smell really
just
good.
like your sweat, so you'll still sweat, will be perfume, your dirt floor in Jannah will be musk.
Because they can't imagine any other kind of floor.
He can't. And again, this speaks to the origin of Muhammad and his people being in such a backwoods area that they just have no experience of floors that aren't made of dirt. That isn't even in their minds. They can't think of it. For them, floors are what? Floors are dirt.
That's just what they are. Right?
And that's
every floor.
Turab, which is, like Abu Turab, the dust, the dirt, right? So your palace will have dirt floors, but the dirt floors will be musk. It'll be super, super nice musk, rich musk instead of ordinary dirt. And in them will be all the good things. Ibn Kathir specifies from another tradition that his thousand palaces will be full of wives and serving boys, and that's what is meant by having good things. Ibn Kathir thinks that there's a river, Kauthar, abundance, that will be pearl. The banks will be pearl, and the clay of the river will be made out of musk. So again, dirt is turned to musk. Dirt floors, guys. Al-Dur al-Manthur adds that not a single one of Muhammad's ummah will be satisfied with hell, meaning that they will not be doomed to hellfire, because Allah will please Muhammad with regard to his ummah, and Allah will give Muhammad the right to intercede for his ummah. So no one who is Muslim will go to hell because they will be part of his ummah. The verse is an interpolation from Medina, according to one narration in Al-Dur al-Manthur and Al-Talabi. Muhammad entered upon Fatima while she was grinding on a millstone, and she was wearing a camel wool cloak. He looked at her and said, "Oh, Fatima, hurry up and consume the bitterness of this world for the pleasure of the hereafter tomorrow." And then this verse was revealed. Now, if this is true, this would be connected to Fatima begging her father for a slave woman from the war booty to help her with her housework. Fatima talked about how she was in physical pain because of all the grinding she did, so she wants a slave, so that slave will be in the physical pain instead of she would. Muhammad refused because he knew that Ali would have sex with any slave woman that he brought into the house, and he didn't want Fatima to be upset by that. He gives other reasons, but that's the real reason why. Ali was an enthusiastic proponent of nikah muta, which is why the Shia have it to this day, and he would eventually claim a slave woman by rape from the booty for distribution when he was leading a campaign after the conquest of Mecca, knowing that Muhammad would not punish him for it, and that is reported in Sahih al-Bukhari. So that's what's going on. Muhammad kept refusing Fatima a slave, even though she's having to work a lot because she has two very young kids who were born close together, and she's having to provide all of this stuff. And everybody else is getting slaves, but she's not, and she's mad. But he's like, "Oh, but you should be unworldly." But really, it's because your husband will bang your slave, and I don't want to deal with it because I've already said that men can bang their slaves. So rather than telling men that they shouldn't bang their slaves, I'm just not going to give you a slave. So Houston, they did not. There was one carpet that is reported in the whole of Mecca at this time. The carpet belonged to Muhammad's grandfather. The Persians, I believe, had invented carpets by this point. But whenever they spread out things on the ground to eat off of, they would put mats down and they would spread out just a piece of cloth to eat on. I had to go through and do quite a lot of research on what fabrics they had. So I actually know this. So that's kind of how poor they were. And you didn't have mats for walking on. You put them down to sit on. So you need to behave, or you are going to
Don't
not
worry about that. Jack already took care
Yeah,
of it. Jack,
I know who this is. It's the same guy who had a meltdown before. So I am talking about your stupid book. So try watching. You'll learn what I'm talking about.
yeah, I mean, you want to know, you want to dispute what we have to say, then watch the thing. We have
Yeah.
not, before this guy, we haven't had one not unusual name in the chat yet. We have 5 dislikes. We have 5 Muslims who came in here, and it couldn't be any of the regulars because, little secret here, if you continually dislike content from a channel, YouTube stops counting it. So we had 5 other Muslims who didn't say anything come in here, dislike the video, not say one word of dispute because they couldn't. They didn't have anything to say, but they did. They were triggered by the title and hit the dislike button.
No, it's quite possible that they're actually still here lurking.
Yeah,
That's
maybe
all.
they're still here. Yeah, well, Muslims. If you hit that dislike button, then tell us what's wrong, right? Tell us where we made a mistake.
Yeah, Jack, I know who that is. He's been here before, and he just changed his name to be offensive, so I'm not saying it. All right, so now we jump to verse 6. Did he not find an orphan and then give shelter? A narration in Al-Qurtubi says that Muhammad was orphaned of both parents so that no creature would have any right over him. So Allah killed off his parents so that his parents could not demand any rights over him. Curiously, however, Muhammad's deity is supposed to value connections of kin above all things, as his name is supposed to be Al-Rahman, to relate to the word for womb. And all who honor Muhammad's deity must also honor kinship ties, or else they will be cut off from his grace. Also in Al-Qurtubi, Mujahid claimed that he is called an orphan because a spectacular fancy pearl with no match is also called an orphan pearl. This is silly because Muhammad is literally an actual orphan. But Mujahid uses this to claim that it means that Muhammad's deity found him already alone in his honor, without peer, despite the verse actually implying that he was found in miserable condition, in need of shelter, and then worshipping pagan gods. This entire section has an amusing hadith to accompany it, reported in Dur al-Mandur and Thalabi. Muhammad said to Ibn Abbas, I asked my Lord a question, and I wish that I had not asked him. I said, Oh Lord, you gave Solomon, son of David, a great kingdom, and you gave so-and-so such and such, and you gave so-and-so such and such. And by the way, this appears in various tafsir in multiple times. We'll run into it again later. And then Allah said, Oh Muhammad, did I not find you an orphan and shelter you? I said, Yes, O Lord. He said, Did I not find you lost and guide you? I said, Yes, O Lord. He said, Did I not find you poor and make you rich? I said, Yes, O Lord. Basically saying that be happy for what I gave you. I'm not giving you these things because I've already done so much for you. So the really important part here is he found you astray and then he guided. So he guided. And again, it doesn't have a guided thee, it's just guided. Astray always means worshiping God other than Muhammad's deity without exception in Islamic texts. Yet this statement about Muhammad, that Muhammad was born a polytheist to a polytheistic family, is so offensive, despite overwhelming evidence that this is true in the Islamic sources. This has to be mutilated to have a different meaning here, softening it to be merely heedless rather than an associator. Ibn Kathir, with reckless disregard for the text, pretends that it means that Muhammad once literally got lost, and Al-Thalabi provides an absurd conflicting legends to back up this interpretation. Still, other narrators insist he was merely astray because he didn't know his prophethood and mission, or say that the Bedouins call a lone tree lost. Muhammad, being a prophet alone, was similarly described. One of the funniest was that Muhammad was confused about the meaning of his Quran until Allah enlightened him by telling him, We have sent down to thee the remembrance that thou mayest make clear to mankind what was sent down to them. So much for the clear book. Another claims that this is in reference to the Qibla, with Muhammad beginning as lost because he didn't know where to face until he was finally told to face Mecca. So the guidance was being told to face Mecca. Now, Ibn Masud has a variant that probably means financially constrained, that you were found financially constrained and so got guided. And that was probably altered because this is embarrassing. Yes, there
So
are.
Andrew says that this verse means Muhammad was a polytheist, which is actually
Absolutely.
not in contradiction to at least some standard Islamic theology. But I found it so funny that someone found that offensive, and they're like, "He got lost.
Yeah,
He couldn't find his way home, so Allah helped him." That's
yeah,
what I was laughing at because that idea was so hilarious.
yes. To literalize that is just absurd. All right. And he found the needy, so he prospered. Again, this is the term that's usually interpreted to mean self sufficient, which would mean that Muhammad has a trait ascribed only to Allah. However, again, it really only means wealth within the Quran and has the further meaning of not being in need as an extension of that primary meaning. Still, some try to interpret it as self sufficient and smuggle in and non existent, except for Allah, into the text. It's somewhat embarrassing that Muhammad is rich since he's supposed to be poor due to his generosity, and poverty from giving to Allah is encouraged. So some interpret this as rich in wisdom. Now, Ibn Masud, oh wait, and I've already covered that. All right.
Wait. Hold on, Mary.
Yeah.
And he found the needy, so he prospered.
Again, they left off the because it doesn't rhyme as well.
So he prospered. So he made you prosper. That's what it's supposed to mean.
So yes, he prospered thee. He found thee needy, so he prospered thee, is what it actually means. But
Okay, because I'm like, that's saying that the person who found is also, or the being that found also prospered.
it means prospered, not in the sense of past tense of to prosper. Not was made to prosper, like he prospered you, like it did. So I know it is.
Yeah, that's fine. When you said the "these" missing, that clarified it. But
Yeah,
as written, that didn't make any sense.
Notice that he leaves out all the he guided, he prospered, give shelter, guided, prospered has no "thee" behind it. Because
well, I mean, some of the guided, that one doesn't really need a "thee" in English. The guided can easily imply "thee," right?
Yeah.
So I didn't find that weird. But then prospered, I'm like, huh?
Houston says, so Surah Al-Fatiha calling the Christians lost mean that Christians don't know their location? Apparently so.
Uh-huh.
So the last 3 verses were appended later because they have different rhymes. All 3 are commands specifically for Muhammad in singular second person, which is peculiar. Why would Muhammad need to be ordered not to oppress orphans and not to repel questioners? So as the orphan, then do not subjugate. Now, Ibn Masud apparently decided that this ought to be do not make difficult instead. And as for the questioner, do not repel. And that's usually interpreted to be a beggar, not any questioner. So you're the person who is a petitioner asking you for something. But Thalabi reports narrations that say it is the seeker of knowledge instead of the beggar. So we're not even sure what Muhammad's not supposed to repel here. As for the grace of your Lord, then narrate. So obviously this is specific to Muhammad. Don't subjugate the orphan, Muhammad. Don't repel the questioner, Muhammad. Narrate the grace of your Lord, Muhammad. So.
Yeah, I mean, right. We know that Muhammad didn't really like the questioners. They overstayed their welcome at his dinner parties and whatnot. So yeah, Allah needs to tell him to stop.
He wanted to bang his new wife. Keep in mind that the context is that it's not only that they stayed, but they were staying when he wants to bang his new wife.
Yeah. But anyway, Muhammad's not all that interested in conveying knowledge. He's more interested in the benefits he gets from being a prophet. So Allah has to correct him on that. And then the orphan, it's probably projection. Muhammad telling himself not to treat orphans the way he was treated. I think that's fair.
I guess. But anyway, the Arabic for narrate is hadith, which is the imperative of hadith. So talking about the blessings of Allah is considered to be a way of showing gratitude, but one narration takes this to mean that Muhammad should proclaim his prophethood instead. So the grace of your Lord, narrate about the grace of your Lord. So talk about Allah's blessings to demonstrate gratitude. But one says that the grace of the Lord was to make him a prophet. So you should declare about that. And so that wraps up.
Yeah. If you say so, to me that sentence means narrate the grace of the Lord, right?
Yeah,
Narrate
yeah.
the message.
Just talk
as
about
to-
Allah's message would be what I would understand it to be. But grace means like the generosity of your Lord. So and they take it to mean like that Allah has specifically given you things, but I think that actually in context it means that he should talk about how great Allah is or his Lord is, and
Yeah.
then all that.
I agree.
So.
Yeah, that seems to be it. All right. So I knew when you're like, maybe we could get through two. I'm like, you're going to be lucky to get through one. And in fact, you did not quite get through one. We went slightly over 3 hours, but yeah, just a couple minutes.
Wait, get through one what? We got through a
one
ton
more,
of
sir. No, one more. When I said like 20 minutes ago, you
Nope,
got 20
we
minutes.
didn't.
Can you get through one? You're like, oh, we might be able to
No, we
get
did
through
get through
two.
this one. This one's done. It's done.
I know. We got through one.
Yeah,
You succeeded, but you were saying maybe we can get through two, and I was saying no way.
Nah.
No way you get through two.
No, we did.
Anyway, this concludes the Mary talking portion. She might say some more stuff, but this concludes the presentation portion of it. Let's take some of these comments here, and then we'll wrap up with Mary tongue is what we're doing next week. Una, Muhammad, sir, favorite color was green, which is why Allah revealed Surah 4, verse 34. Sahih Bukhari, 58 to 25 is the proof of this. You got it. You're getting it, Una. This one is better, though, right? This one, I literally thought this was Saeed talking until I saw the name attached to it. Muhammad, sir, was a good man. He married Sada, so his favorite wife, Aisha, has a babysitter while he ministered. That's like his style, perfectly nailed. Good job on that. So sort of question. I'm still trying to figure out, did Hassan Nasrallah went to Shia Jannah or Sunni Jannah?
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Because of course he is a Sunni, but he was doing the bidding of the Shia.
Mm-hmm. Maybe he went to both.
Different places. Now remember, everyone, remember, if you have been martyred, do your wounds close up in Jannah? Yes or no? I want people to answer.
Oh, sorry.
You're jumping the gun. So we'll get back to that in a second.
All right. Just thinking about giving Muhammad anything is making me want to puke. Well, just trying to help with your diet here. Now you won't eat too much because you don't feel well. So just trying to be helpful here. Also asked for by student Abu Dawood, are you still making emoji of Barak? Just asking questions. Absolutely. That is on my to-do emoji list. Muhammad, from Andrew Martin, Muhammad also has a form of exchanging money for forgiveness. Giving money to Muhammad purifies the giver. What does that say about the receiver?
And that's really interesting because Andrew Martin's making a great point for Muhammad's theology of charity, because Muhammad in Mecca taught that you got good deeds in proportion from which essentially good deeds are taken from the people that you give stuff to. And so he had to declare that it's not charity if you are having a dinner party and just invite people, because people weren't wanting to come to other people's houses if they would have the demerit of charity. So I guess this would mean that that Muhammad is penalized for this.
Perhaps. I was thinking that, if the money is bad, then you're giving to Muhammad. Now he has all this money and he's getting a lot of bad, but that's not necessarily implied. I think Mary's explanation is better there. Nicodemus answered you. He said, no.
Correct. So that means that if you are blown to pieces in Jannah, you become a person who is glued together of all sorts of little bits, and your wounds continue to ooze. But instead of blood, you ooze perfume and the choicest things. I would not particularly care what anyone oozed if they were blown to bits. If they were made up of all kinds of pieces, I just would not want to be near that person.
Yeah, that would be a little unpleasant to look at for sure. But Sunan Abu Dawood has a correction. Your wounds only heal in Jannah if you tighten your leather straps. Don't think that that is Sunnah. Una says people getting a little close to Muhammad before bath time be like, and then it's the dog who actually was smelling something and is repulsed by it. So completely appropriate emoji there. Good use of that. Totally not related to anything, but I did find this humorous here. Camel Law Harris.
Completely unrelated, but all right.
Yeah, I liked it. So you got me on that little pun there. Houston says, in the story of Three Little Pigs, Allah was the one who said, wee, 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 all the way home. This is the proof of Islam. This is a scientific miracle, or a literary miracle in this case.
So someone asked, don't you become a little green Tweety bird if you're martyred? Well, you only become a little green Tweety bird while everybody else is being tortured in the grave. Your consciousness is exchanged to a little green Tweety bird. And I guess, I don't know whether or not your body continues to be tortured, but one way or another, you're not in it. Whenever you get resurrected in many, many pieces.
Mm-hmm. Just to clarify that. Hey, Cartona came back. Yeah. Put user in timeout. Cartona, you've been told multiple times how you can have a discussion about any of your numerous spams. Now, however, we didn't actually mock or insult anyone today. I don't recall. I mean, unless you're talking about Muhammad.
He's probably talking about Muhammad.
And
so mostly I made fun of the exegetes who said silly things about the text.
Yeah. Now, if you're talking about Muhammad or his followers, like the teachers, right? I'm not talking about you, Cartona, which you don't follow Muhammad anyway. But even if you did, I wouldn't be talking about you in this sentence. If you're talking about false teachers, yeah, mocking them is absolutely 100% a part of Christianity. Jesus did it. And the example is found throughout the scripture, not just in the example of Jesus either. Glad to answer your question there. Just a couple more of these. Nori joined the channel.
I can't answer this question in a 20-minute interview, nor is it wise to do so, which is why I never brought this topic up myself. You will not find one lecture of mine about this issue. It should never be brought up in public. And I don't like these idiots, and they are idiots, wallahi. This is not something you discuss amongst the masses, ya akhi. It's not wise. I encourage anybody who is really interested to go deep to take the class. I do this class. It'll be 1 year later.
It is definitely not wise to talk about Reasoned Answers membership in public. Save that for the members only streams coming up soon. Welcome to supporting Nori, and I appreciate that very much. One more imitation of Saeed here. Mahmoud, sir, is angry because he can't afford a Misari contract with Thaddeus or Mary. He can only watch from a distance, as Umar watched Sada. Could be.
Nice. Oh my goodness.
Snoopy says David did warn Robert not to debate Mary because she is tough. And that is a good reminder. I wanted to clip that out before today and play it as an introduction. I'll have to do that next time. I did run out of time actually before the stream today.
Since we have a really small group here now, would we like to hear oh goodness. I don't know why this is not working. Let me see if I can download a copy of something that somebody else made. Here we go. Allah ain't no snitch. See if I can download this. Download video. Ooh. Let's see if I can paste it and send it to you so you can play it.
Absolutely. Well, you could just share it, right? Oh, never mind.
No, because it's on Twitter. I'm not signed on Twitter on
Gotcha.
my. There we go.
All right.
And we can all do a sing along.
And then I'll get copyright striked. And
Oh no, it's made up. It's
I was just joking.
It's AI. Our buddy, the next Zachar Naik, had AI do this one.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I know what this is now. Let me save it because I did watch it when you recommended it in another context, not on this stream. I'll get that up here in just a second. Church in Morocco says, I thought I was a sub. I just saw I wasn't. Lol. This is the proof Allah did not allow you to subscribe to the channel. He is greater than the channel, bigger than the channel even. That is 100% factually true, I'm sure. All right, I got this open here. Let me share it. Give me 1 second to do that. Share audio also, or it won't work.
Gotta sing this together, everybody. We'll go through one time and then we can sing it together, all right?
All
Gotta
right,
sing
let's
it.
do this.
The last hour would not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them, until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, Muslim, or the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. But the tree God would not say, for it is the tree of the Jews. But the God tree, it ain't no
snitch. Come on, everybody.
The last
hour would not come until the Muslims would fight
against the
Jews, and the Muslims would kill them. Yeah, come on.
The Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, Muslim, or the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. But the tree God would not say, for it is the tree of the Jews. But the God tree, it ain't no snitch.
Oh my goodness. Mariachi, that would be amazing. All right. What is it that they're using to make this?
I have no idea.
I don't know which one it is.
But the God tree, it ain't no snitch, or it Muslim.
Oops, I didn't mean to pause it. What happened? Oh, the clip is short. The clip you sent me is 2:20, so that was actually the end of it.
That's it.
The full thing seems to be 3 minutes and 4 seconds, but whatever. Good enough. Good enough.
He sent a link before, but I couldn't see it because I had to log in, but I can't remember what it was called.
No worries on that.
Let's see if I can find it.
Yeah, so you can look for that real quick. We do have 10 more gifted memberships from Jack Ray. And let me fix that. All right.
Song AI music.
Song AI music. All right. Let's try this again. 10 gifted memberships from Jack Ray. Okay, now it's just not going to do it. Shame on you, Robot, for not doing that Well, whatever.
Here's the sad news. We are running out of funds. All our work is going to stop unless people like you watching this video will help us. Your donations can get you a share in a reward and reap those rewards for years to come, inshallah. This is not a donation or a charity, but an investment for your hereafter.
Definitely an investment worthwhile to become a Reasoned Answers channel member. Thank you for that support, Jack. Right? Thank you to everyone who joined on their own accord or would have if they hadn't already been gifted a membership. Much appreciated. Will allow me to do member-only content for silly stuff that I wouldn't want to diminish the value of the channel by making it a public stream. I'm not hearing you, Mary, if you're talking. Yeah, not hearing you anymore, Mary. I don't know what's going on with that.
Oh, I had it off. Sorry.
Oh,
I was
okay.
talking really softly before. It ain't no snitch, because I like that. All right. Style of music. Title is going to be Garqad. Swelling.
All right. Mary wants to play with the AI, apparently. Fair enough.
Let's
she
have
can
a
do
lady
that.
sing it. Generate. Sign in with Google.
Muslim Cowboys. Now that's what I call Hadith, Volume 1.
Oh my gosh. It deleted everything when I signed in.
All right. Mary, what are we going to do next time?
So next time, more of the same. I've got all kinds of other goodies, including next time I definitely will. I will front load our the eating of the son of Satan. Our Shaitan's son is going to get eaten next time, and that'll be front loaded into the because some of the exegetes say that this is referred to in the Quran, the eating of Shaitan.
So Mike Martin says that blonde woman using AI to confirm Islam and the three laughy faces. I kind of heard about that. Was it the blonde Muslim or was it one of these other?
Oh, it was just a stupid blonde American. She's not even Muslim. She's just grifting, and Muslims are so stupid that they'll believe it.
It was one of these other fake Muslim grifters. I did hear about that. Guess what? With a slight bit of effort, I can get ChatGPT. That's what I said to someone who put it in the comments. I can get it to say whatever I want it to say.
Yeah, all you have to do is ask it to answer like so-and-so.
Yep.
Which is what they did. They're like, answer like a Muslim. Is Jesus God? And because they're answering like a Muslim, it says no, because it's answering like a Muslim. I know, like, every time that Muslims get fooled by something really stupid, they surprise me by getting fooled by something even dumber and giving people money to be fooled. There is no group that is so inherently desirous of being scammed than Muslims.
Mike says you can alter the answer. I mean, you could edit the text too, but I mean, you can trick it into saying whatever you want it to say. It's not like it has any actual knowledge. All it's doing is repeating ideas that it's derived from text. So, for example, like if you asked it, do people who hate, what do you call people who hate Islam or something? And it would say Islamophobes, because that's the term people use, right? It has nothing to do with like there being some inherent answer that if you criticize Islam, you're an Islamophobe. It would just say that because that's what people say. It's just going to repeat information. So you ask it to give you information that Muslims say, it's going to give back that information. You ask it to give information that critics of Islam say, and it will do the same thing. Like quite some time ago, live on a stream, we were goofing off. on another channel, and I put it up there, and I said, "Is Islam false?" or something like that, and it's like, I have been programmed not to answer questions like this because they might offend someone. So I said, give me some. I said, give me 10 reasons that Islam is false, or like that. And it said, like, I won't answer that. And I said, what are 10 reasons that a critic of Islam would say it is false? And then it spit out the 10 reasons, right? Like, it told me that it was an offensive question. And then I rephrased it very slightly, and it gave it to me. So
this AI does not know what mariachi music is. It's the tree of the Jews. It's a dreamy little flighty song. It is not mariachi. Very disappointing. I should have said men, but it shouldn't make a difference. It should be able to do it regardless.
It's probably not a common enough style that it really understands what that means. I wouldn't say it's exclusive to Muslims. I've seen a Roman Catholic doing the same thing with ChatGPT, and a lot of people follow it. I mean, you can find all kinds of like non-religious videos. I mean, right now the public doesn't understand what it does, and they're infatuated with it, and they think it's like some kind of super intelligence or something. And thus, you got all kinds of videos on YouTube, not just religious ones, but all kinds of videos. Like, well, you got plenty that are making fun of it, which are super popular, but then you got other people who are blatantly abusing it, if you understand how it works, and people are buying it. So lots of stuff going on there. Last comment from the audience, Cheeky Shaky says, hit the like button. Why to lose this great opportunity? Indeed, why to lose this great opportunity? Make sure you hit the like button on your way out. Any last words from you, Mary?
Yeah, let me go ahead and share our little dreamy song, which is not at all mariachi, but we might as well share it if you can bring it up. Can you set it so that mine can be heard? Find out what.
You're gonna have to on-share it and reshare it with the audio.
Let me try that again. So
if you have to share the entire, or if it's a web tab, you can just share the tab. But if it's
also share tab audio. Oh, yeah. I had it on.
You can do tab audio, or you can do full screen audio, but you can't do window audio. It's not an option. Anyway, there you go. Add it to scene. You should be able to play it now.
The last hour would not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, Muslim or the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. But the tree their God would not say, for it the tree of the Jews, and the cocked tree, it ain't no snitch.
What's crazy is that they pronounce the Q correctly.
The last hour will not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, Muslim or the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him. But the tree God would not say, for it the tree of the Jews, and the cocked tree, it ain't no snitch. It ain't no snitch.
Oh, God!
It ain't no snitch. It ain't no snitch.
Let's to the next
I would not say, for it the tree of the Jews, and the cocked tree, it ain't no snitch.
I like that. I like that one. That's pretty good.
Vaguely mariachi. It's like the mash between a kindergarten song and like a love ballad and a really dumb Broadway show together.
Mm-hmm. I'm a classically trained composer. I could probably write an Islamic opera if I had the time to. Find the time, Serial Ball. Find the time. Yes. That is my recommendation to you. All right, we will call it a night here. Well, one quick comment.
Here is the actual one I did, and you guys can create and submit your own.
There you go. Do that in the comment section, guys. Try to, like, don't just submit, like, you know, don't just put the URL to the first thing you try. Try a few, pick the best one, and put that one in the comment section.
Well, they can't drop it in the comment section because it's a link. Remember, because they're just. But you
well, okay. So I didn't just say right. You can't put it in the comment section of this, but in the comment section of the video, you can put a URL. It might get blocked by YouTube, but then I can usually override it if it thinks it's spam. If it thinks it's like harassment, it won't let me override it. But if it thinks it's spam, it will usually let me override it. So give it a try. I'll be on the lookout, see if there's more of them. Latia Shed said, Muhammad is the fulfillment of nothing, and you are wrong, Latia Shed, because there are numerous passages in the New Testament that talk about false prophets claiming the name of Jesus, and Muhammad is absolutely the fulfillment of those prophecies. So you have been defeated and destroyed. All right, we will be back on Friday for Bible study on the Reason to Worship channel. On Saturday, I'll be having a discussion with a Muslim from the chat. We will be discussing his topic, not mine. I would have picked something a bit more challenging for me, but whatever. We'll be discussing whether the New Testament teaches whether Jesus is God. I will be taking the affirmative, obviously, and he won't have anything to say because I'm not going to allow him to go to his Dawa script. I'm going to insist that he respond passage by passage, verse by verse, to what the New Testament says, not just jump to half a verse out of context like his script tells him to. So in the end, he's not going to have anything to say, I have a feeling. Should be interesting, though. He is probably the most talented Dawa guy we've had on here as far as knowing how to manipulate and knowing what to say. But this topic is, I mean, I'm not big on posturing, you know me, but on this topic, he's going to be utterly humiliated and utterly destroyed. And you can tune in for that live Saturday afternoon Eastern time. Maybe we'll do a fun stream on Sunday. Haven't decided that. We might do nothing. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm definitely going to do a members only live stream in the near future, which will definitely be a fun, silly stream. Thank you all for joining us today, and never forget the all important words of the one and only Pastor Jake.
Say this ceaselessly: Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me.